can, because we got a big fucking storm coming in.
Yeah,
I saw that.
that should be fun.
Nice bomb cyclone.
It's been a great time.
You'll be all right. And with that, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sportsball Podcast. Andy was about to interrupt me there, but he didn't.
I was, and then I decided this is Zach's time to shine in the sun, so I'm going to let him.
I appreciate that. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sportsball Podcast, your source for sports, and as always, your number one sports podcast on the internet. Do not fact check us because it exists, and that's all you need to know. I am Zach, joined by my co-hosts Andy and Nate once again this week, and we are here to talk about, you guessed it, sports.
What?
Starting with, as now colloquially termed, probably said that wrong, but going with it anyway, stick puck with NHL. We're just going to dive right in this week, guys. And I'll start because my team is officially not the worst in the NHL anymore.
Let's go.
Chicago is officially underneath because of, I assume, all the overtime losses. So there's a few more points. Sorry, they have 2 more points than Chicago. So Nashville sits at 15 points on the year. So far, still early in the season. Teams, weirdly enough, in the games I've watched, I haven't watched every single game. Every game they've been getting better. They've looked better, but it's still just not clicking on all cylinders yet. But it'll happen. But NHL is NHL, and kind of in that period of time where there's not a whole lot happening. There's been rumors of talks and trades for the Predators, I guess, but nothing that I've seen that's come out yet officially on that. So no news is good news, I guess, for them, but we shall see. I will pass it to you guys.
Yeah, I guess there's not really much to talk about the Avs. Kind of the general overall hockey picture. The biggest storyline right now, until he got hurt, is now considered, I think, week to week. Ovechkin is now, I think, 27 goals away or 26 goals away from breaking Gretzky's all-time goal record.
That's right.
And then he sustained a lower leg injury, so he's now out a week or 2. So it's not long-term, but it's I was following that news, and then the next day, Ovechkin's out for, a couple weeks. I'm like, okay. So cool to hype for a little bit to break Gretzky's record, but
is IR in hockey only a couple weeks?
No, it can be whatever, because the only reason I know that is because the Avalanche, after now having Alexander Georgiev start to play really well at goalie, he's starting to figure it out a little bit. He, quote unquote, went on IR for a hand injury, but he traveled with the Avalanche for their road series trip, and he might play tomorrow night, which is Thursday. So IR I think IR in hockey is probably just
3 games
roster space.
Yeah, it is, but it's officially the time designation is 3 games. Once you go on IR, you can't play the next 3 games.
Yeah, so it's definitely not what we know IR in the NFL is and it's probably a lot different because if hockey played every week, 3 games would be 3 weeks. So that's, I think most of us associate that with the NFL. It's 4 games or 4 weeks is typically 4 games that you're out for. But yeah, it's, however long Ovechkin's on, but he'll come back, and I think that'll be the big storyline. The Capitals are probably not that bad this year either, all things considered.
Second.
Yeah, which is kind of, I definitely didn't know about it until they started to talk about, Ovechkin trying to break the record. I'm like, the Caps are 13-4. Kind of didn't really know about that either.
I'm hoping when he does come back, they have when you're watching sports, they have the Otani up to bat.
Is it when the Otani Aaron Judge record?
Judge, yeah.
Yeah, the Ovechkin goal counter or something at the bottom.
That was that Aaron Judge thing triggered me.
Except I'd actually be interested in this one.
Yes,
right.
I would be.
Before we let Nate talk about. So, the Capitals are number 2. The Winnipeg Jets still remain at the top. And then Nate's team somehow is still in 3rd place.
The wagon.
The freaking wagon that's the wild wagon. Before we get there, though, we just have to preface that we went into getting into the NHL a lot more this season, and it's been great, except for but my team and Andy's team. Andy's has been doing okay, but like middle of the road. Mine's been terrible. And then Nate's, who as notably was like, oh, Minnesota's not going to do that great this year. Here we are. So take it away, Nate.
I continue to pay the least amount of attention as possible to them, and it continues to pay mostly positive dividends for me. They did drop a couple, I believe, to Dallas and actually Chicago, I believe, last week at one point. So that's a bit of a low light, but they're on the bit of the rebound now. I think they play the Oilers tomorrow or Friday or something. So I will continue to not watch that and hope that the scores work out in my favor.
Nate is not superstitious, but he might be a little stitious.
I'm incredibly stitious. I have heard the streets are saying they're loading up on the oxen. They're greasing those wooden wheels for the wagon, So they're ironing out some like new tarp for the covered wagon as well. So it's gonna be shiny and new here as we move into kind of the middle part of the season, and hopefully just keeps on trucking. So or wagoning, I guess.
Yes.
See, it's funny you say that though, because I'm pretty sure wooden wagons is how the Minnesota Wild get to their games.
They just got to layer up in the winter, but that's what I've heard too.
Hey, you know what? They'll make it work. It's fine.
If they could do it in the 1800s, we could do it now or something.
That's right.
Something dark side.
I'm sure as the NHL season goes on a little further too, we'll have more to talk about. But we're kind of in that same period like we are with baseball or even like college football right now, where it's like, well, games are happening, but now it turns out we all also have social lives where it's like, we have to go attend to those, I guess. So
yeah, it's
weird.
Just weird, right? Yeah, exactly what you said. Like our teams they're trucking along, and yeah, kind of the biggest NHL story right now is just Ovechkin chasing that record, but not going to happen, or at least for a week or two until he comes back to get back that storyline. So,
yep. And then I guess Winnipeg did drop 2 in a row. It was to Tampa Bay and Florida, so not like terrible losses, but they did have a bit of a skid there last week. But
you mean the reigning NHL Stanley Cup champions, Florida Panthers, and the previously Stanley Cup champions within the past 4 years, Tampa Bay Lightning?
Probably. Sounds familiar.
Teams that might not be so scrubbish.
Might. It is still kind of crazy to me though too that like they haven't gone. Well, I shouldn't say they haven't gone to overtime, but overtime losses. Winnipeg has 0. I mean, so does Carolina, but it's just like, dang, like if they're either really, really good or like they're playing a really good team and they just lose outright. So I mean, not great, but 16-3 is also nothing to sneeze at. So
no,
this early in the season,
no.
All right. Well, like I said, NHL is happening, and we'll keep up on it. We're getting better about it before anybody comes and yells at us. But this last week has been kind of uneventful outside of Ovechkin deciding to break himself. He's also 39. He's old. Like,
and then you don't chase, one of the great ones record by not playing in the league that long either. So
correct. And in my head, I'm sitting here like, okay, so. Got to give him props though. At 39 years old,
right?
He's basically like hitting in what I assume. I guess I don't know exactly the comparison here. Where like Tom Brady played to like 45 or whatever in football, which is a notably tough sport to play. But like hockey, as spoken by Thad Castle from Blue Mountain State, is they hit each other with knives on their feet or something to that effect. And so I don't know. Hockey also seems a little bit rougher. So 39 and still trucking. maybe there's something. So, all right, let's move over to professional orange ball.
Yes.
And actually, I'm going to let Andy go first because he's got a team playing currently?
Currently, right now, Thunder are playing Trailblazers.
As of this recording, sorry.
as of
When
this
this comes out, this comes out, people are gonna be like, I'm so confused. There's no game on right now.
Well, depends on when you listen to it.
The apparently goated Portland Trailblazers at the moment.
Yeah, apparently.
Has everyone
This is I thought last night when the apparently goated Spurs also beat the Thunder, but without Wemby, to be honest with you. But no, Thunder they've dropped 2 in a row right now. Sunday against Dallas, which again, they were out without Luka, but Dallas is still pretty good despite not having Luka on the court either. That's why I know when we picked our preseason, obviously we all kind of picked the Thunder, and this be one of those teams, and Dallas is definitely going to be in that mix again. It's just when you take Luka and Clay and Kyrie and kind of put it all on a team, it surprisingly kind of works really well together, despite one of those guys not believing in science, and one might be a washed 3-point shooter.
Just circles. He doesn't.
Yeah, just circles.
No. I think he doesn't believe in spheres. If we're being honest,
things that are not flat. How about that?
Which is just amazing that he's as good at basketball.
He plays
Thank you.
No, and yeah, they kind of in the mix of that. The NBA Cup started for all of our teams too. I know OKC's played 2 already. I don't know about Minnesota or Phoenix. I don't know if you've played 1 or 2 yet. If you haven't, you're probably close to playing 2.
Yeah, our first one was against Portland, and then our second one was against Sacramento.
Gotcha. So again, some of the court designs for the NBA Cup teams are not bad. Some of them are actually pretty good when they're tame. But the other ones that kind of went, bright colors like Oklahoma City, hurts to watch a little bit. So, the Thunder are what they just need to get healthy. Obviously, biggest news tonight is Hardstein's back. Probably going to play restricted minutes, given he hasn't played the entire season yet. He's probably still kind of nursing that hand injury a little bit, but currently, he's been on the court for about 2 or 3 minutes and not showing any let up as far as I can tell. But
ESPN told me he just grabbed an offensive rebound and made a dunk, so that seems like positive news.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. Not gonna lie,
that's weird.
But I did
WebMD is telling me based on his injury that he had that he was gonna die. So somebody's lying here.
Oh,
I thought it said network connectivity issues.
I looked up your symptoms on the internet. It says you have network connectivity issues. I love that scene.
So, yeah, it's obviously just getting a tall center back that is not a Alex Caruso 6'5", which, again, extremely funny that the Thunder were throwing Alex out there as their quote-unquote center at 6'5" when they were playing their small ball rotation without Chet. So, yeah, weird that tall people in basketball kind of helps to have. You wouldn't think that, but it does kind of help.
No. The science actually points against it, but
yeah. Well, if you're the Thunder, it actually might point against it. They, despite everything, they still kind of play really well small ball. No, it's good to have Isaiah back, and just obviously as he gets more minutes played, that he'll be back in the starting rotation and playing close to 30+ minutes a game again, which would be really, really good for the Thunder. And seeing that the past couple of weeks without Chet has been, they haven't lost obviously all their games, but it's been not fun to not watch them grab offensive rebounds because they can't. Because the best thing they could do is they just go in there, they just hit it out, hoping that somebody on the perimeter is one of their guys to catch the ball, because that's the only way they can rebound right now. Is you have to punch the ball, because you can't go up against a 7-foot Wemby and try to grab it when you're 6'5",
dude.
Well, you can. You're just not going to win.
just jump higher.
Again, not with that attitude.
Dude.
Just out jump the 7-foot tall guy. I don't see the problem here.
Well, you do have some points there. I will give you that.
That's right.
But
that's why #1 sports podcast in the world, baby.
You're right. We are. And no disputes about that in the
Don't
slightest.
fact check it.
Please don't fact check it. That's pretty much it for the Thunder. With that, I guess the bigger news, well, I guess quote unquote bigger news. The Cavs did lose their first game, albeit it was to the second best team in the East and your rating NBA's champs, the Boston Celtics. But Celtics were on a 15-0 run, but now lose their first game to the hands of Jason Tatum, and dropped to 15-1.
I think you mean the Cavaliers. You said the Celtics were on a 15-0.
Sorry. Yes. Sorry.
I was going to say, hey, number one sports podcast does not give out wrong information.
No fact checks. Sorry.
Right.
Yes, the Cavs were on a 15-0 run, did lose to Jason Tatum and the Celtics finally.
Yeah, Cavs couldn't shoot the ball at all last night.
Which
is probably
kind
credit to Boston's defense, but
which seems kind of like a problem if we're talking about playing basketball.
It is.
Like you might want to be able to do that at least every now and then.
I mean, Donovan Mitchell played well, but Darius Garland 3 for 21 was a bit of an oops.
Yeah, that sounds like my stat line when I played in like high school.
Which I know, and Nate has echoed this, point. It's, I mean, it happened. You're gonna have it in basketball. I mean, you're gonna have off nights. I mean, even when the Warriors went on their 72, 73 game win streak, I mean, those losses probably were nights that they just didn't shoot the ball well.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's why you play 82 games, because there's going to be ups and flows. So there's obviously you just want to be in the upward trajectory and not this roller coaster up and down all season. You just obviously want to keep getting better and better every game, which you can say that about any sport, but definitely more true in basketball is, you're going to have nights where you don't shoot the ball, but as long as you're not consistently doing it every single night of the season, like the Utah Jazz or the 76ers, which again, everything besides the Eagles and I guess the is right. Besides the Eagles and the Phillies, the 76ers, just their whole culture situation right now is just extremely funny.
I don't know, man. That seems like a normal culture. What are you talking about?
You mean to have a players only meeting and then have one of your Maxine, I think I don't remember how to say his last name. When he goes up to Joel Maxey, yeah. When you have Maxey calling out Joel Embiid for being, not a good teammate and good work ethic for a guy that is an all-star player and former MVP guy.
What do you mean? This is all good stuff.
Glad someone finally did it.
Yeah. They definitely needed to. Not that's gonna save the 76ers. I mean, they're 2-11 right now. They're gonna climb out of a pretty deep hole the entire rest of the season. But I mean, it's kind of like how I compare the 76ers right now is how I compare the Jets front office, because that is a tire fire of a front office is the New York Jets.
And that'll be coming up later.
Yes,
because there's some good stuff
there's some good stuff that came out of that. But that's kind of what I think of the 76ers right now is they're kind of the front office of the Jets of the NBA. It's just everything is like not going right for them, and I don't know how you fix it. And I mean, Joel Embiid is a good basketball player, but it's like, what do you going forward with the 76ers? Do you keep him? Do you just kind of have his ego mentality do what it does? But then again, Ben Simmons was a lot of that cause too. I mean, Ben Simmons is not good at basketball. We thought we kind of thought he was. Maybe he wasn't.
Well, hold on.
Who's we?
The nation.
So a good question.
The nation. It was just decided that he was good at basketball. The we is a collective as as a people.
The people that watched him play basketball kind of had other opinions.
I don't make the rules, Nate. I just speak them.
I will say, I think the 76ers thought he was going to be good, and that he wasn't. I'm only basing that off just because they're the ones who drafted him. And that's really about
76ers are generally a pretty poorly organization.
Ever since Dr. J.
You're telling me the team that couldn't win it with AI is still struggling.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it?
It's only kind of weird though, not like major weird, just kind of weird.
It's kind of weird. So that's why I kind of, and we'll get to the Jets in a second. But that's how I kind of think of the 76ers right now. Is they're just kind of the Jets of the NBA. They're just a tire fire all around, in lack of a better phrase.
I can get on board with that.
And the Jazz suck, but like they're not, causing rifts within their team. They just suck.
Yeah.
They're not making it a media show.
Jazz and like the Wizards are just a different tier of bad.
Yeah, they're just bad, but they're not like national media bad.
Yeah,
they're
Philly's just imploding.
Yes, like I said, besides the Eagles and Phillies, they're the one Philly team that's just not good.
Yeah, I obviously
I don't actually know how good the Flyers are. I don't think they're that good.
That's what I was just looking up. Actually, I don't think they're great.
The Avs beat them. I know that much.
We didn't talk about them on our stick puck segment, so clearly not good.
Clearly not good.
Yeah, they must be. Yeah, they're pretty middle of the road.
Yeah, you guys. How about the Wolves, Nate? Are they what the kids say back?
Only in my heart. They continue to ride the weird roller coaster. They like I said last week, they had about 3 pretty inexcusable losses in a row with the Heat, and then dropping 2 straight on a back-to-back night in Portland to the Trailblazers, who apparently might be a wagon now. I guess I don't know. I don't understand things sometimes, but yeah, they followed that up with an overtime win in Sacramento that I got to witness in person, which was great until I had work the next morning, and that was just a little less great because overtime's fun, but knowing that you have to wake up early in the morning after overtime just makes it a little less fun. So
that is a real thing.
That is how I feel about every Sunday night or Thursday night or even Monday night football game that goes into overtime. I'm like, yes, free football. And it's already like 10:30 here. And I'm like, oh, this sucks though, because I'm not going to go to bed. But like, I need to watch the end of this.
Yep. It was great. I'm glad I was there. I'm glad I got to experience it. But I was definitely in the back of my head like, man, come on, guys, speed it up here. Someone figure it out. And also, that was the game that De'Aaron Fox went off for 60 points. And I think the Wolves had like at least a 20-point lead in the third, maybe even into the fourth quarter, and they won in overtime, so that was neat, I guess. And then we followed that up with I didn't get to watch this game either, but it sounds like it was a pretty sleepy game against Zach's team on Sunday, and Julius Randle hit a step back 3 that turned out to be a travel, but we don't apologize for wins. So
bro,
big preach, Zach.
It is what it is. I don't want to like step on you if you got more Wolves talk. So go ahead if you got more. But
my only additional Wolves talk was that regardless of how you may or may not feel about the game, I don't know if you had like watching clips or anything.
I did.
The court looked pretty nice.
There are some NBA Cup courts that are nice, and then
that wasn't even an NBA Cup. I think that was their city.
Oh, just there.
One. It looked pretty nice. I'll give
which leading up to us talking about this before I get to the Suns side of things, it is ridiculous how bad some of these courts have looked. So yes, I have seen what you were talking about, but like, man, were those redone just for the NBA Cup stuff, or is this like
in the city edition?
They're doing fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It's both.
Some of them were bad.
Yeah. Like the Cup ones will be done when they're done. And then the city edition will be whenever teams decide to wear those uniforms, which is not too often either.
I mean, at the end of the day, fancy courts like that are never going to be my thing because I'm very much a minimalist kind of guy. Don't look at all the crap behind me. But
it's the marketing is not for us. It is definitely for kids in high school, even younger kids than that are getting into the NBA. And I mean,
the ones that are saying like skibbity riz and stuff.
Yes,
like that
those
now.
kids.
Got it.
I mean, I'll give Adam Silver this. Like, he knows how to market the NBA to kids. It is what it is. I feel like most kids growing up that will have they'll have favorite teams, but I feel like if you ask a kid like what their favorite like professional player is, most of the time it's probably going to be like a basketball player or a football player. It's going to be one of those two sports.
Mhm.
And I only say football because of Mahomes and Lamar Jackson kind of taking over the sport right now. But basketball, definitely. I mean, Ant is a very prime example of this too. I mean, Ant's definitely one of the up and comers, and just that I don't want to call it gimmicky, but I mean, definitely Ant's attitude and just his
aura around him.
Yeah, just his aura.
He's got a lot of confidence.
better words, aura. I mean, he's definitely just one of the up and rising coming faces of the NBA, and kids that age just gravitate towards that. But it's the court designs, all of that is definitely not marketed towards us because we could care less. As long as the product on the floor is good, I don't care what happens, what they do with it.
Well, that's it. I feel like it'd be so distracting playing them.
Right. That was my biggest problem with at least Portland's court, where it had all the flowers and different designs on it. I can't imagine trying to concentrate and actually play it.
Exactly. I'm just I feel like, and I mean, granted, the argument's always going to be, oh, they're professional players, whatever. I get it. But football fields don't really change that much in that example. And so basketball courts, they're just yo, just screw me up, fam. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing this. But I'm a minimalist type of guy. Again, don't look at all the stuff that I have behind me. But I would much rather, I just like a clean and simple aesthetic on a lot of things. So it's never my thing. But
right.
But transitioning for me to the Suns, I guess in the same vein of outside of maybe one team that I'm following lately, 4-game losing streak for the Suns, which kind of makes sense when you have no Kevin Durant, no Bradley Beal, which was not to be expected because he was playing really well to begin the year. But then it turns out when you use your body as a punching bag for the other team and just throw yourself in like a rag doll, might make playing the game long-term tough when you do that. Who knew? But yeah. And then I think
weird.
I think Nurkic was also out for a period of time. I think they just announced he's available tonight, kind of similar to whoever you had said earlier, Andy, for the Thunder. Yeah. So might be similar where it's limited minutes just to kind of get him to ramp back up. But Nurkic has also not necessarily been great either. And to that note, neither has Devin Booker, who the offense is supposed to run through.
But he did have 44 against the Wolves.
So it's weird because he has a game like that. He'll have a really, really good game, and then he'll rebound in reverse and have not a great game. And then he'll have another. It's just he's very on and off right now. I don't know if it's with a new head coach. They're still just kind of getting into the groove and learning the system, but I mean, it's a 4-game losing streak, but they're still 9-6. So it's not bad. And it's still early in the season, a lot of season left. I don't know. I think, and then I guess the other big news that came out of Phoenix is that the owner, who, thank the Lord, the Suns finally got rid of Robert Sarver. They had, it's not official or anything, but it's sounding like Kevin Durant will sign an extension and basically leading to probably his retirement in Phoenix, which is great if he keeps playing at the level. Well, currently he's not playing, but if he keeps playing at the level that he was before he got injured, that'll be a good sign. But again, I mean, yes, I'm a fan of the Suns, so obviously I'm biased in that regard, but I also just like watching good basketball. So when our teams do well, it's a lot more fun because it's yes, I don't have, obviously I cheer against the Wolves when we play them, when the Suns play them. Yep. But outside of that, I don't actually hate the Wolves and the Thunder. I don't hate them either. I don't have any real reason to hate them. I guess really the only teams that I don't like, Suns wise specifically, is the Lakers and the Mavericks. So, as long as there's good football, good Lord, Football too, but as long as there's good basketball,
Foosball.
as long as there's good basketball being played on my TV screen when I watch it, then I'm good with it. So
Right.
it's plain and simple.
Ethical hoops.
Correct.
That's what we live for.
I will say though, the Thunder game against the Suns I thought was interesting because you look at all the scores in the NBA now, it's 110, 115, and
That
that
was a
one was
very low-scoring
99 to
game.
83. So it was
Defensive
actually
game.
a good, very much a defensive battle, but
And
the Thunder were probably destined to win that one regardless, but shows that the defense is pretty good for the Suns.
That's just I mean, if you look at all the defensive stats in the NBA right now, the Thunder are primarily going to be at the top of all those categories, and I think that's definitely just their game plan style. Obviously, they have scores on the team with Shea and Jalen, and Isaiah's now coming back. And when you get Chet back, obviously you'll have him, but definitely the Thunder are primarily a defensive team first, and they're fine winning games like that too. I mean, low scoring defensive battles, they're just going to be scrappy and turn the ball over. But
I mean, that's what Minnesota did last year. They were number one defense, and it
pays off.
Offense was it helps if you just stop the other team, get some transition buckets.
Yeah, it doesn't take
fun
that
basketball
much.
to watch too. So
I'd say it's a game plan.
I definitely love it, but I mean, a lot of that bias too is Alex has been primarily a defensive player his entire time in the NBA. So like anywhere he's been, that's just what he focuses on. So that's why I love a defensive type battle team too. Is that's just what I've been used to watching with Alex so far, and definitely being on one of the better defensive teams in the NBA just suits him so much better. I think it's a fun. I think we're all having fun so far. Maybe Nate here and there, but.
Yeah, like I said, it's still like we said with even NHL. It's early in the season. There are kinks that are going to be worked out. There are going to be ups and downs, and basketball is especially high variance.
Oh yeah,
I do like when you start calling your team unserious.
Hey, they still are at a lot of points. If you're up 20 on a team in Sacramento, you should probably win by 20 and not go to overtime with that team. But
yeah,
so you say that. You say that, but I think the exact opposite happened the other night. So
you're right.
Come on now, Nate. Come on.
I don't know. I don't know. I also think Ant is a little just tired because I mean, I think he had a kid in like January, and then they played into June, and then he went straight to the Olympics, and then went straight back to training camp, and has played every game so far. And I think he played probably at least 75, if not more, games last year, not including playoffs. So I could see where there's a little just like fatigue setting in, and not necessarily locking in as much as he should. But
I'm going to stop you there because while that sounds pretty rough, it's been a really hard week of work for me, and I'm very tired as well, so I don't feel bad for him.
I get that. Jeez. I'm just saying. Sometimes athletes also send it into.
No, I paid to watch them not be tired. So
yeah, they're not allowed. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, they're at least Well, that and they're doing a lot more physical activity than I am. So I would imagine that their body's probably a little more tired.
I assume that you're probably pretty tired just because I haven't heard of anyone finding that Patreon link yet.
Yes, it's been
keeps me up.
I'm not a scientist here, but I feel like at least a few weeks without food's not going to do great for the old.
Thank the Lord that the dumpsters are full in this town.
You can go outside with the trash pandas too.
Yeah.
You start to make friends with them?
Yeah, we hang out. Like we talk.
Oh, good.
It's good company.
What's up? It's my man Larry. Yeah, I've got all their names down. They don't talk back very often. It's kind of weird, but
probably just screech at you.
According to people that are going by, they say that I'm going crazy because I'm talking. But at this point, I think they're just overthinking it. To be honest.
Yeah. No, that sounds like it. But also, please, dear God, someone find the link.
Please find the link so I can eat real
Someone
food
save
again.
Zach.
He absolutely needs it.
Please help me. I'm gonna die. Anyway,
That might have been a little dramatic.
I mean, unless we got any more NBA talk, I feel like it's a good time to transition over to that professional football.
One note I will say about basketball for the college side, Nebraska did lose their first game this past week. Again, albeit a 3-point loss to a St. Mary's team that's more than likely going to be in the tournament. If you're like, oh,
5 seed in the tourney last year, weren't they?
yeah, and if you're like, oh, who's St. Mary's? Like, we should be beating them. Like, no, they play in the same conference as Gonzaga, and they usually play Gonzaga really tough and sometimes beat them every year, and then definitely meet them in the conference championship every year. So St. Mary's is a really good basketball program. And you have to be when you play in the conference with Gonzaga, who's not going to be there much longer. Not that they're going to the Pac-12 eventually. So it might be St. Mary's conference going forward. But yeah, Nebraska lose. They dug themselves a big hole in that game. I kind of watched it on and on because the times I did watch it, they were losing and doing bad. So I just turned it off. And then every time I checked, they were coming back. And I'm like, this is probably for the best that I don't watch.
Sounds like a Minnesota Wild strategy. There.
Yeah. Probably was for the best because they started to play better to come back when I didn't watch. But they were down almost 20 points at one point. No, it was like 22-9 or 23-9 at some point. So they were very close to going down by 20, but they eventually did come back. They did have a slight lead for about a minute, but then they lost by 3. But bigger note of that is they play Creighton Friday. Obviously the big time
early.
Yeah, it is early. And all the media that the guys that I follow, listen to, also on and so forth, they also said that like this is very early. This is usually like a middle of January or a December type game.
I was say usually it's a little.
Yeah, It's usually later, so it's very early in the season. Creighton's still undefeated, but again,
not for long.
Not for long. Not till they figure out that Bryce Williams is the GOAT and that Andrew Morgan can take over Kalkbrenner any day of the week. And definitely do not look into the fact that Kalkbrenner is the reigning Big East Player of the Year and favorite Big East Player of the Year, and probably going to be up there for Player of the Year in college basketball. Definitely do not look into that stat.
But Andrew Morgan's going to play in the Big Ten.
Correct. But I'm very interested to see how that game is. I think it matches up better than how Nebraska played last year. Just because, yes, Creighton's going to get their threes, and they are a 3-point shooting team, but they haven't shot the ball particularly well this year. Neither has Nebraska from 3.
As long as Baylor Shireman doesn't come for his 18th year and hit 10 threes in a row, I'll be all right.
No, he's playing for Boston this year. No, but they're obviously, the biggest piece that the Nebraska will have to defend is Kalkbrenner. And, when you're trying to guard a 7-foot center who is really good, he doesn't look like he's good, but he's like when you watch him play, he's a very lengthy dude that does not run very fast. But he is
welcome to being 7 foot.
Yeah, welcome to being 7 foot. He's very good inside of the ball. So, the first game of the year that Creighton played, he dropped, I think, 50 or 49 points, somewhere in that range. So he's very capable of scoring points. And Creighton very much could just run their offense through them if they don't start hitting their outside shots. They're like, okay, we'll just give it to 7-foot guy that you can't guard and just give him the ball every time. So Nebraska's going to have to play better defense, and they have played pretty good defense this year. They just kind of need the shots to start falling. And that's still kind of the working with the team, kind of get them to gel together process that Fred is still going through. But, another good quad one opportunity chance for them to come up. Game is in Omaha, so it's obviously going to be rowdy for the Skurs. But we beat them there 2 years ago, albeit by everything imaginable. And why not do it again,
I was just looking through scores right now, and our friends at Southern, throwback to like 2 episodes ago.
Yes.
Up 14 on Texas A&M at halftime at Texas A&M.
Darn.
that. Oh, I forgot.
Southern.
We need to talk about our UTRGV friends.
Oh, yes,
Who
we do.
was very much putting number 19 Wisconsin on upset alert and had the ball the last possession to tie the game or win the game, one of the two, a couple nights ago against Wisconsin, and they missed their 3 at the end. But they are a really good team. All 3 of their losses are against Nebraska, Creighton, and Wisconsin, and all 3 of those games have been really close. I mean, I know Nebraska won by 20, but if you watch that game, it was very close up until about 4 minutes left when Nebraska got to the free throw line. Like, they're gonna be if they make it to the tournament, I'm definitely picking them to win a game or two because they are sneaky good.
And Nebraska's first round matchup, UTR.
I honestly, I don't know what I would do in that situation because
I'm playing the game in Trev's backyard.
Then yes, everything would go against Nebraska at that point. I would not pick Nebraska in that situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. we know as Nebraska fans when to not cheer for something, and that's
Right.
exactly one of those. Like the only team in Nebraska that I think we can confidently say has a shot of doing a lot this year. Not that the basketball team doesn't, but like in that scenario, 100% bet against Nebraska.
Right.
But like I think the only team that like I would put actual money on if I did sports betting is
UConn.
the volleyball team. No, I'm
Oh.
saying for Nebraska.
Local
specifically,
sports.
like the volleyball team. Speaking of UConn, though, since we're on the basketball subject, their head coach just set the NCAA record for wins. Sorry, UConn's women's coach.
I was gonna say like
Gino
it's not-
Auriemma.
Yeah, though they're the one that's won the many championships and everything. Yes,
Yeah, it turns out he's pretty good. So
happens when you win a lot of undefeated games and
Yep.
in a season.
yeah, 11 national titles total. That's
Kind of good.
That's it.
wild. That's a lot. That's
Yeah,
it.
I'd have some respect if it was 12. But
12 is
Right.
your threshold.
must be nice to be a scrub.
Saban doesn't have your respect. Bear Bryant doesn't have your respect. Kirby doesn't have your respect.
Well, no, see, Kirby should have his respect because he's a known underdog.
This
So-
is true.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
That's
sorry.
the only reason why I respect. is
Everybody
because-
doubts
Yeah.
Kirby Smart in
Yeah, yeah.
Georgia. You're right. That's
known
bad.
underdog Georgia. Well, we're not quite to that part of the segment yet, but now we'll transition to NFL.
The foosball NFL. Yes. A lot of. I guess we can start with your game, Zach, since we're going to go in order, go chronological Thursday night.
Yeah,
I love
good.
your running back with all of my heart.
Same. It did take him. It did take him quite a while to get going, though. And this is one of those games where I just had to keep up on my Gamecast on my phone, unfortunately. But again, like I said about Nate, but I kind of fall in this category too. Sometimes I'm not really superstitious, but I am a little stitious. So in this case, it was one of those things where I was like, do I need to go and like start watching the game somewhere to see if that's like the voodoo, the break the voodoo curse that was the first half? And apparently no. The first half they were just like, oh, we're just gonna play kind of slow, and then the second half they decided that they were gonna come out. But yeah, exciting stuff coming from Philly taking down the number one in the NFC East. Well, it was tied at that point, but
At that point,
officially taking over as number one over the Washington Commanders, which I didn't actually see. As in, I was thinking that it would be a really good game, but I thought like the Commanders were on a hot enough streak going into the game, even with the loss to Pittsburgh, where I was like, well, I don't know if they're necessarily the better team, but I could see them pulling off the win just by pure streaky type luck kind of thing. But no, the Eagles pulled it out really well. And like all the stat lines that I'm looking at, just in a general sense, are very good. So
I mean,
apparently the Eagles
Jalen could use
decided,
a couple extra fantasy points, but that's beside the point.
I would agree. Only because, well, wait, did we play each other though?
No, we did not.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. You stay muted, Andy.
Yeah, Andy, turn your mute off.
counterpoint. Saquon should have 8 or 9 more touchdowns this year because of that freaking tush push play.
I'm not here to debate the semantics of
I'm
fantasy
here to
football
debate the
arguments.
semantics of
He should be a better system running back then.
All I'm saying is that the Eagles look
I didn't
like they
finish
might
that
be.
one.
All I'm saying is that the Eagles look like they might be a fairly legitimate contender. I'm not going to say like to the levels yet of Detroit, but Detroit has also lost a couple, and they also.
No, they've lost one.
One.
Is it just one? I thought it was two.
Yeah.
No, it was just one, buddy.
Baker.
Well, see, but that's what I mean. Is like if
And
you
the
get
Bucks
pressure,
are like, eh.
if you get
kinda
pressure
good.
if you get pressure on Jared Goff, I think he starts making mistakes. So, and turns out the Eagles defense finally decided to show up. So it's about to be a couple losses then after they play the Eagles. So
Hell
hot take.
yeah. But yeah, it's fine. I won't. I mean, I'll keep obviously arguing that Saquon should have more touchdowns, and he should, because 31 other teams in the NFL in every other situation like that would just give the ball to Saquon, but the Eagles.
He should just go in the end zone before he gets down at the 1-yard line.
And that was the part that really made me mad, because you know which play I'm talking about, where he almost did, and he went down at the 1, and I was like, you mother, because I knew exactly which play was going to happen next, and it did.
He's just got to want it more, man.
No, Eagles definitely making a case to be one of the teams to challenge Detroit come playoff time. Obviously, we'll get to Minnesota's perspective in a second here. By no means are they a slouch 8-2, but the past few games have been a little shaky for the old Vikes there. But again, we don't apologize for wins. But yeah,
I mean, the Vikings narrative is always bad. So like,
always bad as he sits at 8-2.
Yeah. Like I said, this is a rebuilding year, so I'm just happy to be here right now. I'm not gonna say that they're the best team, but they have a lot of good pieces that will hopefully only age well with an extra season.
Right.
So,
and
obviously
more cap space going into next year.
Yes. And Nate obviously doesn't like this fact, but the Packers did what the Chiefs did last week and used that devil voodoo magic to win another game on a blocked field goal against the Bears.
It was against the Bears at least. So
it's on one hand it's the Bears losing, but it's like but the Packers win, so it's like
we don't love seeing the Packers win, but if it's at the expense of the Bears, it evens out all around. So.
Which again, I watched that last drive and I'm like, Chicago's got this in the bag. I mean, Caleb Williams did what he needed to do. He got the ball down the field, got him in field goal range, and I was like, it's exactly how I felt against the Chiefs. It's like you did what you needed to do. You got the ball down the field. You got it right where you needed to go, and then they're blocked field goals to win the game. So, Packers survive, stay alive in the NFC North race, which desperately they needed to. Just to, keep the ground on, I guess, quote unquote, keep the pressure on Minnesota to not slip up. Granted, the NFC North still might get 3 teams in the playoffs anyway, so it might not matter at that point. But obviously, you don't want to be losing games down the stretch to kind of put that in jeopardy with that. But we don't need to talk about the Lions. What they did to Jacksonville was, I don't know what adjective you want to call it.
I think that game may have, like, the way that Detroit handled Jacksonville, I think that may have broke the Geneva Convention, if we're just being honest, because that was just unfair.
I'm just surprised Dougie P still has a job.
Yeah, and I think at this point they just may ride it out to the end of the season.
I mean, you can
honestly, right?
you can look at it and just be like, well, he didn't have Trevor Lawrence for a few games, and obviously, there's a lot of excuses that can come out of it. But it's kind of it's looking the same thing like he did in Philadelphia, where he just trusted his guys too much, and kind of similar to what we've seen with Nebraska coaches, where it's like maybe you should go get somebody that might be a little better than that person. What do I know?
And I don't think teams can interview coaches until obviously the end of the season. So you're already looking at the Jets looking for a head coach. I forgot who else.
No, it's going to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, sorry. Well,
yeah, he's already the head.
He's already
what are you talking about?
There's a couple other teams that I'm forgetting that are already in head coaching searches. going to be in head coaching searches. Well, just Dallas is going to be in there at some point. We know that. There's no way Mike McCarthy lasts this season.
It would
At least
be the
I don't
funniest
think it
thing
would.
ever. I mean, I can't imagine. But
I
Jerry's
can't
not gonna
imagine,
fire
but-
himself. So.
No.
Saints are
So-
in.
Yeah,
run
I
if
guess
we need
Saints
to.
are in there as well. That's who I was forgetting. So, I mean, if the Jags make a move, they'll probably towards the end of the season, once you kind of get an idea of which teams aren't going to make the playoffs, and then maybe start interviewing some of their assistant coaches when the season ends. Because obviously you can't, any teams that are in the playoffs, you can't interview those coaches until they're done. But if you have like an idea of a team that's not going to make the playoff, that's going to be not getting there at the end of the season, you can start kind of looking at their assistant coaches being like, hey, we might want to interview this guy, so on and so forth. But they're in there. Yeah, that's still, I don't know if Stefanski makes it out of Cleveland another year. And he might, just given the whole Deshaun situation. They're like, I mean, they haven't won a game, but they have definitely looked better with Jameis at quarterback. It's not by much, but
Shocker.
yeah, shocker.
I feel like
not
I feel
that
like
everybody
the
screamed
bar
out week one.
I feel like the bar for that was in the freaking ground. Like,
Well, it was.
Yeah.
It definitely was.
can you make a pass? Correct, or congrats, you are
Yeah.
the better Browns quarterback.
Yes. But yeah, Nate, if you want to talk about your team before we get in kind of like the later slated games that were actually worth talking about and that are good.
Well, that's a rude introduction, but thank you. But to your point, I didn't watch the game. So the Vikings beat the Titans by 10 in what I imagine was a dominant 10-point win.
The only reason I
Sam
said
Darnold
that,
had like 30 fantasy points, so
Yeah.
I assume he wasn't terrible.
the only reason I said that is because I did watch that game with Tyson, and not one memeable moment happened from Will Levis, and I was entirely upset.
That I will apologize on behalf of the organization for that. That is a
Because
little
every
unacceptable.
game he's played, he's had some sort of memeable moment where he could look back and like, oh, that's just Will Levis. Didn't happen.
Well, maybe we just felt bad and wanted to give him like everybody gets one, you know.
Right.
we gave to Mac Jones last week. We're just playing the nice guys of the NFL right now. We'll jump into that. We play the Bears on Sunday, so that'll be,
As long as you win by
I'm
more than
sure
1 point, you'll be better than the Packers.
I'm not going to hang my hat on anything there. I don't even know what the spread is, but I can't imagine it's more than like 3. Oh, I'm a liar. It's 3.5.
Oh,
Still a total of 39.5 like last week's game,
jeez.
but not as bad as the 36.5.
That under did hit. The Vikings Titans
Wow.
did hit.
LOL.
Like I said, it's rebuilding season. Everything's gravy at this point. I figured we'd be like at least 4 or 5 games below 500 at this point in the season. So I am not apologizing for wins, and I am
we don't.
genuinely excited to see how it turns out. Because if we can do decent enough things with this team, that at least gives me more hope for how the next few years will hopefully shape up. So that is my hashtag analysis on the Vikings game that I did not watch this week.
Pretty insightful, actually.
Sounds good to me.
Loved all of it. But yeah, I could echo that too, Nate, with the Broncos, and obviously they're 6-5, but a lot of it is, the Vikings and Denver same in the fact that we have like the top 2 defenses in the league. So it definitely, if Denver had a defense like they did last year, we certainly would be probably 3-4 wins at the moment. So I mean, it's helped that your defense just keeps you guys in games and just allows your offense just to get the points when they need to and win the game.
That is my main wild card, I will say. All you teams looking for coaches, stay away from Brian Flores. I will find you.
Albeit from the Baltimore game. I mean, Denver's losses have just been, I mean, they've kept them in games. The defense, they just, the offense to start the season just was obviously trying to figure everything out with Bo Nix. Yeah, what we were discussing before we got on is Kirk go outside of October is not the same. He's got one good month, and that's about it. But yeah,
it really sucks that it's in October for fans of Kirk Cousins, if we're being honest.
Which is very early in the NFL season. So, Denver, they didn't humiliate Atlanta, but it wasn't a great showing by Atlanta either. 38-6, and I'm not going to say like a coming out for Bo Nix party. I mean, certainly he played superior, elite, if you want to use Big Cat's words of how he saw Bo Nix. But
wait, you guys brought Joe Flacco back in?
Yes. And certainly do not look at the Colts roster to where Joe Flacco currently is. But yeah, it was, they're a stress-free game. Haven't had one of those in a while. So it's always nice to get those every now and then and just kind of sit back and relax. You're like, got this in hand. But Denver got through the hardest part of their schedule when you had, Baltimore, Kansas City on the road, and then Atlanta, which Atlanta 3-4 weeks ago, I was still thinking like that's maybe a win game just of how they looked at the moment. But shocker, when you take away Bijan in the running game, not really that good.
They're still technically leading the NFC South.
They are. And Tampa had a bye this week, so that's we can't really tell.
Mike Evans is supposed to be back this week.
Yes, and Mike Evans is supposed to be back, so that probably should help. I mean, even when they weren't, Baker still has had good games with his backup receivers that he's played. So it's not like they can't do it. It's just going to be that extra security blanket for Baker now that having Mike Evans back on the field. So I still think they're the favorites to win the NFC South. I guess unless Atlanta turns a corner here pretty quick, but I think Tampa's just got too much of a firepower offense. And Todd Boyles,
Atlanta does have the tiebreaker over the Bucks.
They do.
They've won both the games against them.
And that's, it's going to be Tampa to have to win out. Well, not win out, but they're going to have to win the majority of the games. But yes, Atlanta did sweep Tampa. Yeah, it was a fun game. I enjoyed watching the offense actually do offensive things compared to one of our other teams that we follow, which we will get to shortly. But obviously, as much as I want to get on the Bo Nix Rookie of the Year, and he's certainly in contention for it. Ever since Jaden's injury to his ribs, he hasn't been the same quarterback, but that's only been 2 to 3 games since that's happened. So still plenty of time for, the Jaden to keep his hot streak going like he did to start the season. And Washington, they still have to play the Eagles twice again. And, he didn't look that great against Philly. Now, granted, Zach and Vic Fangio's team has finally started to figure out what I said at the beginning of the season. I sorely did miss when Fangio wasn't our defensive coordinator, because once he gets it going, he's a really good coordinator. Just took some time in Philly just to get things adjusted. But since your guys' bye week, you guys have been lights out on defense. Which is obviously what you want in the NFL when you're trying to win a title. And going to need it for Detroit. That's for damn sure. Because even throwing 5 interceptions doesn't matter to Detroit because they can still win a football game. So you're not only going to have to make them throw 5 interceptions, you're also going to have to score points on that defense. So
it'll be fine.
Yeah. Once we get to that point. But yeah, I'm just happy that I have a coach that doesn't hate my quarterback. That's the joy part of the season.
That's pretty good for team morale.
It is. It's really good for team morale, believe it or not.
It certainly helps, at least. I don't know if it, debates whether it's good or bad.
Right.
The jury's still out on that, but
yes,
I think it helps.
But yeah, the Broncos have, like I said, a favorable schedule coming forward. Play the Raiders this Sunday, then you get the Browns on Monday and the Colts. before you finish with the Chargers, Bengals, and Chiefs again. So, if you pick up three of these next 3 games and go into that home stretch, sitting at 9-5. I mean, your odds of making the playoff are pretty good at that point. But the Bengals, depending on how they keep doing, again,
giving away games.
I think the Bengals might be cooked this year.
And I mean, Denver plays on week 17, so like if they're fully out of the playoff race by then, I mean, Denver could be playing, the offensive team that might choose to sit their veterans at that point. Not saying if they will, but I mean, if they're mathematically
time
eliminated,
for the Jake Browning show.
Yeah, I mean, it very much might be like shut Burrow, Jamar down for the year and just don't risk injuries going into the offseason if they're out by then. And the Chiefs losing, obviously I'm very happy that the Chiefs lost. I will always root for that. I'm only a little. Well,
we haven't got there yet.
Wait, what happened?
No. Josh Allen, rocket legs. No more needs to be said.
That run, I mean, real quick. I mean, we can come back and talk about it, but that run to seal the game, though, was awesome.
Yes, it was. Very much enjoyed.
He wanted it, unlike Saquon.
Okay. Okay, sir.
There are 2 shots that don't need to be shooted.
I would just like to point out that right now the top running backs in the league in terms of like get yards and whatnot
Derrick Henry
are between Saquon and Derrick
Josh
Henry.
Allen and Josh Allen.
Josh Allen can't be a running back. He's a quarterback. Come on.
That's a Lamar.
Yeah, only he can have the running back as a quarterback title. Get it right.
Yeah. But the only reason I brought like the end of that schedule up and the Chiefs losing is like if the Chiefs are in a position at the end of the season to try to get the 1 seed, I was kind of hoping there'd be a chance that they wouldn't play their starters week 18 against Denver. But like now that loss kind of puts that in jeopardy if the Chiefs lose another game or something like that, that come week 18, they might be fighting for a 1 seed and they need a win. I'm like, crap, they need to play their starters. So it was a very small chance. I was like, maybe we'll play Carson Wentz when they get to Denver week 18.
Carson Wentz comeback game going to be strong.
Well, like I said, I'm never not going to root for the Chiefs to lose. Like, obviously, I very much enjoyed everything that happened to them on Sunday.
With that said, though, like I know we were talking about like Philly and Detroit looking like powerhouses.
Bills.
But the Bills, like it's weird because I feel like
I'm in the camp at this point. I'm just gonna believe it when I see it in the playoffs because they do.
Oh,
this
absolutely. I was gonna say it sucks that they won this game in November and not January, but whatever. We'll
do
see
this
what
every
happens.
season.
But I don't know. I feel like the Bills have been. I don't want to say sneaky good because they're obviously good. They're what are they? Are they 9-2?
Yeah,
maybe. I think I got them and Detroit mixed up with their records earlier. But regardless, they're not necessarily sneaky good. But I feel like nobody's really talking about them the same way they are with like Detroit and all these other teams. So sneaky good is not the way I would describe it. But
superstars outside of Josh Allen, honestly.
Right.
I mean, yeah, and I guess that makes sense. But it's weird because you would think that they'd be getting a lot more. And it is also Buffalo, I guess. Maybe that's what it is. But I just feel like they should be getting a bit more attention.
Right. And
I don't know.
I mean, that you could say the same for Pittsburgh. I mean, Pittsburgh's right now leading the AFC North after their
expected
after their slogfest Chris Boswell MVP type game against Baltimore. Not a single touchdown, all field goals in Pittsburgh.
You loved it. You loved it. Nothing warms. Go ahead.
I don't know what Baltimore was doing at the 2-point conversion. I mean, it was very discombobulated of what they were trying to run. I don't think the receivers knew because it was very much a Lamar bootleg to the left, but then like the receivers weren't blocking. So then Lamar just got tackled like 5 yards behind the line, which would have tied the game, but also a very questionable play choice by Baltimore in that situation too. When you have the likes of Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews to just throw it up and let one of your big tight ends go get it. But what do I know?
Not Lamar fast.
That's fair. Nothing warms my cold dead heart more than seeing San Francisco lose, though. I may be at this point. At this point, I might just be drinking haterade against the 49ers, but
no, Gino revenge tour, baby.
I love it. I loved it.
I reverse psychology that game.
Arizona's still in the lead after that game now.
They sure are.
And might be their division to lose. So,
honestly, not even
very wild sentence to say.
No. As expected, remember?
Oh,
as expected.
As expected.
Come on now.
They do play Seattle 2 times in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So that'll be
and that might decide the division.
Yep.
If San Francisco can get their poop in a group, which again, I don't. Zach's obviously not going to root for that. You would think getting Christian McCaffrey back would help, but it's almost detrimented them.
Well, hot take, weird, but when you get a guy that's just coming off of a 4 or 5 week injury, thing you probably shouldn't do with him is give him the ball 48 times. I know it wasn't that many, but it's like maybe you should like ease him back in a little bit.
Especially when wasn't it like a double Achilles thing too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe man played his first games after 10 weeks.
Noted running back, uses legs, comes back after double Achilles, and they just ground pound. And I'm like, I get it. He's good. Like, obviously use him. I understand that. But on the same token, like, you have other people on the team.
Longevity is important too.
Put it in that superstar Brock Purdy's hands. Make him win it. Like, good Lord.
That's worked out well.
Darn.
It did for one season until they lost to the Chiefs.
They could give the ball to Josh Dobbs, is all I'm saying.
They could. And you know what?
Throw the pass in there.
At that point, I would just.
For about a game and a half.
I was going to say for those 2 games, and that was about it.
But that's all you need. You need a game and a half. Get Christian McCaffrey like back up to speed. You're good.
Exactly. It is.
My phone is right here, Kyle Shanahan, at the ready.
I'll give you everything you need to know about him.
It is kind of funny to me though, because it's like they have Deebo Samuel, who notably hates kickers apparently. Like that was last week, and that was the crazy story.
Besides Chris Boswell, that was an awful week for kickers.
It really was.
Yeah.
Tucker missed 2, which, seeing how that game ended, were very pivotal field goals that he missed. I mean, there was just a lot. I mean, you can name more kickers. I mean, there was a lot of kickers that missed this last week.
My new hero, John Parker Romo, did all right.
And I presume that he is good? Question mark?
Sure. I think he was in the UFL, whatever the side spring league is.
One of those.
He was good there, and then I know he was like in training camp over the summer, and then we drafted Will Riker, and we saw him kick, and we're like, hey, that guy's pretty all right.
Hey, those guys better.
Foot 2 ball part of football, so
yes.
Sorry, buddy. And then his hamstring attacked him, and we're back to John Parker Romo.
Yes.
Hot.
Yes. Yeah, we don't need to talk about Texans Cowboys because why?
No,
Joe
but
Mixon's good.
The sun wasn't out. There's nothing really to talk about.
Yeah, you're right.
The sun wasn't.
But what we can't talk about is 1, the Chargers blowing that lead, and 2, getting it back and then almost blowing it again.
Don't you just love it when stuff like that happens, though?
And I know
who wanted to win that game less.
Nobody wanted to win that game, and I know we were talking about it, and I know Nate had mentioned it. I was like, "Is Brandon Staley back?" Which, yes, his spirit was very much alive that game. And if he would have had it his way, Dobbins would not have scored. He would have rather fumbled at that last goal line, and then Burrow would have thrown a 80-yard bomb to Jamar Chase to win the game. That is exactly how Brandon Staley game would have gone. But it didn't. The Chargers did win, albeit that people were probably, and most people would tell Dobbins to go down to that situation because why wouldn't you? Just run the clock out, and you have Dicker the kicker, like probably going to make the field goal.
Hey, I mean, it didn't work out for Chicago.
It didn't work out for Chicago. Yeah, McPherson missed a couple that game too, which was
Yeah.
Remember all the sideline shots to Zach Taylor, and he's just sitting there wide open, like, what do I do? So, yeah, like Zach reiterated earlier, Bengals might be cooked.
I think they are. I think it's official.
Despite Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase putting up MVP type numbers, the rest of their team is just not there.
It's
Joe
even weirder
Burrow
to
just
me.
needs to start playing football in week 1 instead of October.
Yeah.
It's just weird to me because I was watching that game and somehow it had escaped me. And it's officially now 7-3, but the Chargers at the time were 6-3. I was like, when did that happen? Like,
That's been
I feel like
happening.
I feel like I didn't ever register that they were good.
No,
At least decent this year. I was like, what?
And you can make the same case for the Broncos of just like their wins in terms of who the Chargers have beaten. Because they've beaten the Raiders.
I think the Broncos are the only team above 500 that they've beaten.
Yeah, and they are because they've beaten the Raiders, the Panthers.
That makes more sense.
They've beaten the Broncos. They've beaten the Saints. They've beaten the Browns. They've beaten the Titans and the Bengals. One of those teams is only above 500. It is Denver. All the other teams that they have beaten are under 500. And the teams they have lost to, which, again, are teams that are acceptable to lose to, knowing what we are knowing now with the Steelers and the Chiefs and Arizona.
Arizona is definitely the outlier there, though. Still,
Yeah.
I mean, like, granted, it was a close game. 17-15 is by no means like a bad score, but like, it's a weird score,
Right?
But
again, I can make the same case for Denver, but Denver has beaten two teams that are above 500, which are just Tampa Bay and Atlanta. But we don't apologize for wins, but still, that's right. If you go with the quality of the wins, I mean, the Chargers have easily probably had the easiest in terms of quality of wins of just who they have played. So their schedule, I think their schedule does get tough now going forward. So they're going to be. It's going to be
Sunday. So
yeah, first off, that's going to be a good matchup regardless.
Harbaugh versus Harbaugh.
Then you get the Ravens, the Falcons again. If the Falcons can actually pick it up, they might be decent enough. But then you get the Chiefs again, get Tampa Bay, who's definitely not a slouch by any means, and then you get Denver again, and Denver's probably going to want some revenge, just based on how that last game went. And I mean, they played the Chargers week 4, something like that. So Denver's definitely improved since then. But I mean, their schedule does toughen up for them, and kind of fraud watch time for the Chargers to see if they're actually for real or if they're just beating down on lower competition, which you're supposed to do in the NFL. But again, one win against a team that's above 500, and it's Denver, and they're only a game above 500. So we're definitely pushing that line there too. So
I think for me, the two hottest stories to come out of the NFL, we'll start with the quick and easy one, is Mr. Salami Man is taking over for New York.
Danny DeVito?
Tommy DeVito is coming back.
No, Danny DeVito.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't know if Danny DeVito would be a great quarterback with his height.
We don't know that, Zach.
He might have a rocket of an arm, though. So
exactly.
Mr. Pastrami, or whatever the heck his name was, whatever he went by, is officially going to be leading the rest of the way for the Giants, which I'm sure will work out well for them.
Their backup might be better. I'm just saying. He's got
it
some
is
swag.
weird.
It is some swag to him.
Well, so there's like apparently drama behind that too, which is I guess part of the story, because apparently Drew Lock, like as part of his contract, was I don't know if it was written in there. I guess it could have just been spoken, but apparently he was destined as like number 2. So they're like, well, why is he why is DeVito starting over me? And so sounds like trouble in paradise for Drew Lock, or maybe the Giants, I guess.
All of the above.
All of the above.
I don't know that I would call the New York Giants paradise, but I get it. Yeah.
Well, it could be worse. You could be the other New York team, and you could be the Jets, who
That's true.
I know.
Oh my god!
I know Andy said tire fire, but that seems tame for what's going on over there.
There's been so much that has come out since they fired their GM this past week.
That's the first thing. They fired their GM, which needed to happen probably last year. Which is so weird because, like, at the Eagles, because he came from Philadelphia and he did okay.
Right.
I think he wasn't a GM, but he was something else. But it was like, that's weird. He has not been good. But then apparently now, like, the story is that the Jets are thinking after this year of getting rid of Rodgers, and just starting over clean. And I'm like, well, that might be the smartest thing the Jets have done, this year, and they haven't even done it yet.
All right. I'll just rehire Adam Gase. We can start the circle over again.
I believe there's a definition of insanity moment there, but you tell me.
No, it'll probably work.
And then the other one being that the Jets owner said, "Oh, we should bench Aaron Rodgers and put somebody else in." I'm like, I didn't think that was such a hot take, but I guess
it was, and that happened. I mean,
that was like obviously
today. It came out to, like, the report
came out today. Yes, today, sorry.
When it happened, albeit was when they lost to Denver 10-9 in that really ugly rainy game that happened, but. They were just like, why couldn't we beat this team? What happened on the offense? I'm like, well, again, knowing what Denver's defense is now, they're better, but Aaron Rodgers sucks, which is the more bigger part of that story that we all know, but them apparently. And maybe their GM was onto something.
They should have given Adrian Martinez a shot.
Yeah.
At this point, like, what do the Jets have to lose by trying somebody else? I mean,
they're definitely out of the playoff race.
The thing is, they're gonna the something else they're gonna try is going to Tyrod Taylor instead of giving, like, their young guys a run.
Yeah,
even then, like, it's still weird because it's like I feel like they should be doing something to try, but I guess they're gonna keep with.
And the Jets. The Jets are 1-6 since they fired Saleh. But again,
obviously,
the problem.
Yeah, Saleh was the problem. Mm-hmm. And then they got Devontae Adams, and obviously he's been lights out since he got there.
Yep. But hey,
don't look at my fantasy team with Devontae Adams on it.
Aaron Rodgers has concepts of a plan, so it'll probably work out.
Yes. I don't know if Saleh will get rehired this next coaching cycle, but I feel like he's going to be a head coach again somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure he'll be a head. If he's not a head coach,
defensive coordinator.
Oh, for sure. I'd be willing to bet
the Jets' defense was not the problem there, as we know.
Well, I think you can go back and say he wasn't the problem.
He definitely was not the problem. He's still a really good coach. And
I would gladly accept him as a defensive coordinator if someone poaches Brian Flores.
Yeah. He's a really good defensive coordinator. So his day was probably going to get thrown around this next cycle unless he decides to take a year off. Same with Belichick's name has been brought up too.
I've heard that.
More linked with the Cowboys, but
that would I need that to happen, actually.
It might.
Belichick to the Cowboys?
That's the link. The only reason that's a link is because I think Jerry Jones and Belichick are like buddies. Or there's some sort of connection with them.
Oh, well, it could be, but I don't foresee that happening because I think if Belichick comes back, he wants to have the same kind of power he had in New England.
Well, yeah, that's why.
And Jerry Jones would never give him that.
That's why I need it to happen.
Yeah. But that would just be an implosion from the start.
Bring in Aaron Rodgers off the street for the quarterback. Yes. Like, oh man, Hard Knocks.
Oh,
yes. That would potential, man.
Hilarious.
The entertainment value.
Really
on-field product, terrible. Off-field product,
great.
100 out of 10.
It'd be just all the drama off the field that you would. That's the only reason people would even watch any of that stuff.
That'd be great
just to see what's going on outside.
All right, the college football portion of things.
Let's do it.
So
favorite portion.
Yes, favorite portion. I think I speak for all of us outside of Nebraska, and most of us did not watch this past weekend's games. Besides Oregon almost blowing it at Wisconsin, which you could also say vice versa, that Wisconsin blew it against Oregon. But Outside of that, I really didn't watch too much college football. Besides Nebraska, I should say, whatever happened there.
It really does. It does put a damper on things when the team that I cheer for in college football, that we all cheer for, I guess, really just kind of ruins the rest of my mood for watching college football.
Yes,
Just like, man, I don't care anymore. Like, I don't care.
No. But the thing that I guess we could broadly talk about, if we want to here, is the rankings that they are right now for the playoff. And obviously this is definitely going to be changed by next week, because the big game this weekend is obviously Ohio State and Indiana. Is definitely more of a put up or shut up game for Indiana. Just to see if they're for real. Because we all thought the Nebraska game was going to be their true test. Whoopsies.
It was not.
It was not. To many people's surprise, including us.
It was a true test of my ability to finish a game.
Yes, it was. But yeah, that's going to be the big key point this weekend is, if Indiana loses, what do you do with them? Are they automatically knocked out of the playoffs just based on their strength of schedule? Is that how the committee's going to see it? And so on and so forth. And definitely, I mean, first, the winner of this game is going to be in the driver's seat for second place to go to the Big Ten championship game against Oregon. Big Ten already announced that Oregon, despite all the possible scenarios, they could lose out the rest of the season and still make the Big Ten championship based on the possible scenarios. I don't know if that happens with 2 to 3 games left, but I guess if you're the Big Ten, you do whatever you want.
Seems illegal, but
yeah,
whatever.
I know. So Oregon's already in the Big Ten championship game. It's just who's going to be number 2. So obviously, if Ohio State loses, they're definitely
Georgia in there at this point.
Yeah, why not? Obviously, Ohio State loses, they're definitely out. Then it'll be between Penn State and Indiana. But I mean, Indiana wins, or no, if Indiana loses, then Ohio State is probably going to have the edge because they'll have the head-to-head against Penn State and Indiana. But yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with Indiana if they lose. I don't know if they're going to say goodbye.
I don't think there's a route for them because their only other games against Purdue, and that's not exactly a resume builder by any means.
A barn burner, you say?
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting, just because it's going to say a lot about the committee of how they factor strength of schedule and the possibility of leaving out an 11-1 team out of the playoff. I mean, that's going to be. I mean, we clearly saw it last year when they left out undefeated Florida State in favor of Bama, I think. Was it then?
Yes.
Yeah. So they clearly don't have an issue with doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Albeit they were probably right with now how Florida State looks.
I was going to say they might have been onto something at that time.
So maybe hindsight is now 2020 and that they were doing us a favor.
There's really no way to know.
There's no way to know. You're right.
No way.
Absolutely no way to know. But I know the other point that I brought up with you guys is kind of how the SEC plays out, because it's a realistic possibility that, I mean, whoever is the loser of the SEC championship game could have 3 losses and they might get into the playoff, whether that be Bama or Georgia or Tennessee. I haven't really looked into those tiebreaker scenarios, so I actually don't know what that possibility is. But I know there is a possibility that a 3-loss SEC team could get into the playoff because of losing your conference championship.
If it's Georgia or Bama, they will be in the playoff.
Yeah. Yep. And so it's like you look at that and you're like, well, how do you then leave like an 11-1 team in favor of a 3-loss team? So
because they're not named Georgia or Alabama.
Correct.
This is the criteria at the top of their spreadsheet or whatever.
So I mean, it's going to be after this weekend. Definitely next week's rankings are going to tell like how the committee views things depending on how those games go, and just how much pull does BYU. I mean, I don't think BYU makes it unless they win the Big 12. I don't.
That would suck in the Big 12, right?
Which might be Colorado. I know we don't want to say it, but it might be Colorado.
Gross.
And
I don't like it either.
Hate it, but Nebraska blew that team out, so
They did. Which
don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means for Nebraska either, but it might mean something.
It means Nebraska peaked at game 2 of the season.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
we've all been there.
We've been somewhere. That's for sure.
Nebraska has peaked at like game 2 of the season for the past like 15 years.
No, they just haven't peaked. That's kind of been the issue.
I'm not saying that we're at the peak
Just
of the
haven't
actual
peaked.
mountain. We're just like down here on like a lower.
No,
peak,
I'm just
trying to get
saying
to the top.
they usually like win one of their first 5 games the past like 5 years, and then lose like the other 4 after that. So it's like, yeah,
Right. Because how the bracket would shape up right now is your 3, or I guess your 4 automatic buys would be Oregon, Texas, Miami, and Boise State in that order, based on your conference championship wins. Then you'd have Ohio State, BYU as a matchup, Notre Dame, Bama, Penn State, Georgia, and Indiana, Ole Miss currently. Interesting part there is Indiana's 7th seed. So, and they're undefeated right now. So I agree with your point, Nate, too. Like if they lose,
there's
they're
no
out.
path. There's no path.
Because
they basically, if they lose, there's no. I mean, they just have to win. Like, they have to beat Ohio State, and then if they lose the Big Ten championship to Oregon, yes, they'll probably still get in because they'll be a 1-loss team in your conference championship loss. But a loss now, especially this week in Ohio State, then their path might be done. Just because then you look at the teams that are just outside looking in, at that point, would be Tennessee. You could throw in there SMU, BYU, A&M could make a run. Definitely Colorado if they win the Big 12. Probably steals a bid somewhere from, BYU maybe, probably at that point. I think they've put Colorado in over BYU. I were just looking at it, despite, if things go the way they were, I think they would put Colorado in over BYU if Colorado wins the Big 12. But
that'd be weird.
It would be weird.
I mean, that'd probably mean that Colorado would have to beat BYU in the championship.
Correct.
So that makes sense. But
yeah, it'd be weird.
Yeah, there's no way you could put Colorado above a BYU right now.
I don't want to go get slaughtered at Ohio State, though.
They actually have a.
He lost to Kansas.
They actually have a ranked win, though, like Colorado.
And Nebraska could have been ranked. They were ranked after that game, actually. Just like you could say Nebraska's best win is Colorado right now.
By far.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. UTEP's had a great season.
Sir, they lost to Kent. They barely beat
the uncertainty of
Utah State team into overtime. Well, they were also 1-8.
The uncertainty, as you said that, was just perfect.
So yeah,
I'm interested in a lot of the like lower league stuff.
Yeah,
because I think one of the bigger games, like outside of Indiana, Ohio State, like the biggest game is Army Notre Dame.
Oh yeah,
undefeated Army going into 9-1, 6th ranked Notre Dame. Like, I mean, if Army wins out, you can't really.
That's what I'm saying.
Keep them out?
What if Army wins out?
And then if Boise State wins out from there, do you only take one of them?
Right. Like
Tulane's also been playing really good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't forget Tulane.
And Tulane's in the American with Army, so that would be like a potential championship game. Would you keep out? Tulane over Boise State. Would you bring both? Would you keep a 3-loss SEC team in over either of those?
And that's the thing is, that's why I want Army to win out, just because I want to see what the committee does.
That's going to be one of those where it's
because Army being undefeated, awesome story. But 2, how does the college football committee handle that? Like, do you just put them in knowing that they're probably going to go get slaughtered against the 5-6 seed which might
Here's-
be Ohio State or Georgia at that point.
Here's what you can here's what we know right now, though. Whatever they do, everyone's gonna hate it.
Oh yeah, but that's why we talk about it, and this it's all going to be mute in 2 years when they go to 16 teams in 2 years, anyways.
We're still gonna be having discussions like this anyway, just because.
Yes.
Regardless, the committee's going to be like, well,
Would it be 16, 17?
Right. But
So
at that
all
point, it'll
13.
be more acceptable to talk about 3-loss teams getting
in like a
the playoff.
decade anyway. We're going to just have the playoffs are just going to start week 1 and then just be like,
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Be like,
Every
well,
week's
as
a tough game.
the games go on, by like week 3, we're like officially got seeds and everything, and like, okay, like this is how it's going to play out. So it's just basically like March.
every week
It's just
is a
like
playoff.
basically March Madness, but just absolutely bonkers.
Forever.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see too what happens in the ACC, because you have Miami and SMU that are like
Which Miami
currently
dropped a
locked
game that they shouldn't have
in.
dropped, but they did.
Clemson also only has one conference loss, so they're like somewhere in that conversation as well. And SMU, I guess, doesn't even have a conference loss because they lost to BYU.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I mean, and then yeah, Clemson has 2 non-conference games to finish the season, which is stupid. And SMU and Miami both have conference games to finish the season. So there's a lot of variance that could happen down the stretch in the ACC. Not that the playoff committee respects the ACC as a conference anyways, but that's your like 12-13 conversation probably.
Right. Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting playoff discussion. Like I said, this weekend of games, mostly just because of Ohio State, Indiana, is going to dictate a lot of how we're going to see how the committee favors, one-loss Indiana team or an undefeated Indiana team. At that point, you're talking about, do you keep a 2-loss Ohio State team in the conversation over like a Tennessee or Tennessee's the only one right now not in the bracket, but like if Tennessee wins out and Ohio State wins out, it's like, are they going to favor
Ohio State? That's also in bold at the top of the spreadsheet.
Versus like, what if Tennessee wins out and Georgia loses 3 games, and then you're comparing now like a 3-loss Georgia team versus a 2-loss Ohio State team. It's like, which one do you favor in at that point? Do you go with the Georgia bias just because it's Georgia?
They create a play-in game now.
Yes. That. So a lot of, I think it's going to be fun variability because I don't have to dictate and decide this. I just get to argue about it.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see. Like I said, it's cool that there's a lot of moving parts in the last 2 weeks of the season, at least.
Right. And you're not talking about just the top 4. Right.
Yep.
Because
the top 4.
Because like if you went off the old bracket right now, it would be Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, and Indiana's at 5, and Notre Dame. So like if Indiana lost and you're debating between Notre Dame and Indiana over Penn State, it's like, which one do you put in at that 4 slot if it's not Penn State? So yeah, it's definitely better that it's a wider field to kind of judge and talk about this, but a lot can happen, as we know, and football is very much a week-to-week sport.
Yep. And there's some
very
weird conversations. Some very weird conversations that could pop up if Indiana runs the table and wins the Big Ten too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a slow, minimal chance, but it's there. And especially how Oregon looked last week against Wisconsin. They weren't their usual selves. So it could have been just Oregon had a bad game, but if they showed up like that against the conference championship game, and they're like, uh-oh, what do we do here?
And then even just if Indiana beats Ohio State, and then where do you put Ohio State comparatively against Penn State? Yeah. So
in a game that Ohio State mostly dominated that game against Penn State. So I'm glad I don't have to decide it. I just get to argue about it, which is better. I like this side of things.
Me too.
No big boy decisions
on this side.
No big boy decisions here.
It's a lot easier on this side to do it.
Yes, it is.
But now we unfortunately get into the sad segment.
I know.
Yeah. We don't have to. We could just skip over it and say that nothing actually happened and all is fine in Cornland.
I will allow that as an option.
I
choose
would,
that one.
It can be.
I would choose that option if Dana didn't come out and say what he said this past week.
Honestly, that's about the only thing I'm taking from the game is we did see a little bit more somewhat of an offensive production. I think the pieces are there now. I think we're going to see. I think it's going back to like what I said with my like prediction last week with Nebraska, where I said that I thought it was going to be a closer game than it was, but I was like, I could see us losing this one, but the pieces start or like the gears start kind of spinning. And we're like, okay, like now we know our offense can do things. But that was by far the most Nebraska-esque Nebraska game that we've seen this year. But I mean, for sure, where it wasn't even the inconsistency of the team showing up or anything like that. It was 100% a ball that should have been intercepted or batted down or just should not have been completed. Bounces off some guy's helmet into his hands. I'm like, as soon as that happened,
like 4 of those. And we had like at least 2 or 3 opportunities.
Right. As soon as that first one happened, I was like, there it is. That's the moment you can point to where it's like, that's where Nebraska lost it. And that was in like the first quarter. So it was just like, but yeah, to your point, Andy, Dana coming out and just being bluntly honest was great. And so
like,
I don't know. I
jokingly said it, but like that was the quote going around was like, he was asked, why did you decide to come back now? Why did you come to Nebraska? And he's like, I was bored. Obviously, jokingly, saying that because, I assume he's like rule. It's just like football is your life. Once you're a football guy, you're just like that the rest of your life. That's just you live, eat, breathe, play football, die with football, all of your life. But it was just refreshing, just kind of like the blunt comments. You're right, Zach, of just how he said things. And he came out and he's like, he's still learning the name. So he's like, he's going like, yeah, the 17 guy. 18,
I love that.
Number 4, the number 16 guy. It's like I forgive him for that. He's like, you've been here a week and a half. Like you're still learning these kids' names, obviously.
I don't even think he needs to be forgiven for it. It's just no, like that's you know, I'm of the mindset. I'm sure you're right. Like he's still learning the name, so it's easier to go by the number. But it's just like I don't know. It would be hilarious in my head if he was just like, it's just like you have to earn me saying your name. Like that's super probably not appropriate at this point in the world, but like that would be funny.
But it was just refreshing just to like hear, he's definitely an outsider. Just the new set of eyes come in. He's like, you guys are, quote unquote, butt ass bad at perimeter blocking. It's like, you guys are some big dudes. Why are you so bad at it? Type thing. And then, that opens up a whole host of questions of like, what have they been doing all year? Is Garrett McGuire the one teaching them this? Was it Satterfield? Like, what are they doing during practice? Of like, are you just not practicing? Or are they just not conditioning enough? And I mean, we didn't see like a whole, obviously new system in play on Saturday or anything, but there were some good perimeter blocks on Saturday, albeit from what we have seen before. The screens are still an issue, but I mean, like run blocks on the outside, players trying to get outside, Jaron Bonner in a couple of those plays. I mean, there were guys that were holding their blocks, not getting flagged for it. And I'm like, all right, that's a little bit of a difference there that we didn't see the first 9 games of the season. So it's more of him just coming out, like calling guys out, like, why are you so bad at this? Like, you guys are some big dudes, some strong dudes. Like, you should be better at this than what I've seen so far. And he kind of said that with the running backs too. And he's like, your running backs just don't hit the lanes. They don't hit the holes, but you guys are some big, tough dudes that can run. Like, he was like, yeah, there were some good lanes, some good holes on Saturday for the running backs to get through that we did hit, but there were other times where they didn't hit that. So like, what's the issue with that? And, is that a Barthel problem? Is that just how the play, like, is it a Raiola problem in terms of block scheming up front for the line and everything? So I mean, there's a whole lot of obviously question marks when you just take those comments, and those are like only comments we've heard from him since he got hired. So it's just more evidence needs to be on the table. So it was just it was refreshing to see just a new set of eyes on it, and hopefully it's the same thing on Saturday. He did kind of leave that mystery guy comment on Saturday. It's like, yeah, there's one dude that I saw that I like really am intrigued that you guys are going to see on Saturday have implemented in the offense. So remains to be seen who that was. I kind of have my picks that's going to be Carter Nelson, just because we kind of saw him like those first couple games, and then he just kind of got pushed to the side. So I'm kind of banking it's going to be Carter Nelson just kind of get implemented back into the offense in some way, shape, or form. Because he, from what we've seen so far, and that obviously this was all when Dylan was playing better too. He looked he looked good. Just kind of as the slot receiver. That's how they had him positioned at that time. But yeah, it's not going to be a whole world of change, and we might see some progress on Saturday. We might see some progress on like a Black Friday against Iowa. So it's, albeit from the defensive side of things, yeah, I agree with all your points. Just it was unfortunately one of those games where things were not going your way, and there's nothing you could do about it. But at the same time,
defense even played that bad either.
No.
That's the problem. Like,
and there were times that they
really well.
They could have played better too. I mean, there were definitely the Hartzog touchdown that he gave up should be an interception 10 out of 10 times. He let it go through his hands. I mean, that should be an interception in the end zone touchback. That again, the weird, funky third down off the face mask to the receiver that gets him to the half-yard line. I'm like, at that point, you're just like, what do you do? But I remember, I think it might have been USC's third or fourth drive after the pick six that there was one that they did score on. I mean, there were 2 or 3 underthrown balls on that drive where whoever their quarterback was just got outside the pocket and threw it. And you're like, oh, this is like a floating duck pick. And our DBs just didn't time it right. And you're like, that's really odd, because for the experience that we have in that secondary, you feel like they shouldn't be doing that in game 9 of the season or game 10 of the season. So
one is okay. Like sometimes you just sometimes it's like, okay, when there's multiples though, and it's like there was potentially a systemic problem here. Oh, but that goes to your point though too, kind of like basketball, where some days it doesn't even matter.
Right.
Like you could be where you need to be, and the ball just says nope. And it's
not.
somehow it does like the weird thing where it's like, oh no, it actually went this way somehow.
Mm-hmm. And Rule made it to the point where that wide open touchdown we gave to them, he was like, yeah, it was just, guys not talking to each other. It was busted coverage. And you're like, shouldn't be happening though. Not, game 10 with that secondary, the defense has played, together all year. Like, you shouldn't be kind of having busted coverages at this point where guys don't know where they're supposed to be. So it brings into a whole load of questions too, as this defense in a nutshell is a boomer bust defense. You need them to play well, and if they don't play well, then you're kind of SOL, as we've seen throughout the season. And the stat that keeps getting brought up is like, if Nebraska gives up 14 or more points, we've lost every game this season. And
I was going to say, not a great combo with
it's not
production.
So it's why the defense is kind of boom or bust right now. Because it's kind of when you start flirting with that 14-point threshold, you're like, if the offense doesn't have a 2 touchdown lead at that point, you're kind of flirting with the here we go again, type mentality. And that's what happened on Saturday too. It's we got the lead, and then immediately 4 plays later we gave it up right again. So it's like, no matter what you try to do to give your offense or your defense any sort of momentum, they just go out there and they just kind of give it up, which is a shame, to say that, but that's kind of how it's trending right now. And as much as I last week said that USC was kind of a dumpster fire mentality type program, like this team this weekend is probably even more than that. And if you haven't heard, that Wisconsin is kind of going through their own little OC coaches change at the moment. They did fire Phil Longo after their game against Oregon, albeit I don't think it was really Phil Longo's fault that they lost against Oregon. Certainly the offense was, from what I did see, their offense definitely should have won that game. But the more interesting part that came out of that was Fickell trying to answer how they were going to call plays, which, again, it's a really fair question after you fire your coach of who's going to call your plays the rest of the season. He just said, I don't really know. It's kind of going to be a collaborative effort.
I'm sure. Here's the thing. They play Nebraska. Starting with this experiment. So, of course,
yes,
naturally, Nebraska is going to make Wisconsin look like they should be number one in the playoffs. So it doesn't matter because at this point, they're just going to need to take all the data they gather from the game against Nebraska and be like, okay, well, now let's try to figure out what's going to work against an actual team. And then we'll try to do that because we've seen how this goes. So we know where Nebraska's going to land.
And what I've learned or like what I've seen this week is I think the only like offensive experience person in terms of calling plays on Wisconsin staff, I think is their tight end coach. And I think it was only at the FCS level. So I don't know if they have like anybody on their staff that has actually called plays at a FBS type level of a power conference team. So which is probably why Fickell said it's going to be a collaborative effort. But I guess if you're Wisconsin, the vibes aren't great from that standpoint, but they're probably also looking at the same standpoint of looking at us. They're like, yeah, their vibes aren't great either, which they aren't. So it's a bowl eligible type game on Saturday with a team that's got a 1 week offensive coordinator experience versus a team that is trying to figure out what they're going to do on offense this week as well. And it's only probably going to be the Sicko Committee's number one game of the week. I don't know how it's not.
We were number 2
last week, so if we were number 2 last week on their list, I can't imagine this won't be number 1. So a lot of things to figure out. I know Dylan said after the game that he promised that we were going to win. So great bulletin board material that we love to give Wisconsin.
Scary, but I also love it because I feel like the team needs. I feel like the team needs a type of confident person. Yeah, like it is a bit bold, especially in the position we're in, to be like we're gonna win out or at least win and get to a bowl. Like, great. I love the confidence. I love that he feels that. I still wonder if he's also playing hurt though. He doesn't look. And granted, the competition's gotten a little bit stiffer since the beginning of the year. I understand that, but he just doesn't look the same. And I know a lot of it's probably coming down to he's a freshman, and our offensive line certainly doesn't seem to be real great at their entire job. But he just, I mean, even when he does have time, there's just moments where it's like, what are you doing? Like, you got to make that throw, or like you made that throw in the past. What do you like? I don't know if he's hurt or if like his confidence is kind of taking a hit. And so he's double thinking. You're like thinking far too much rather than instinctively throwing or running or whatever. But it is what it is. I mean, at this point, Nebraska's disappointed me enough that I don't know if I want to keep harping on it just because it's like, whatever. But
I will let Nate speak, and then I will offer you some positive, optimistic outpoints. But Nate is the director of optimism.
Director of optimism.
So I was going to say, forever the optimist.
I'll let Nate talk before I do, in case I take any of his points away.
Yeah, I mean, obviously disappointed that we weren't seeing 150-yard bombs like I was expecting last week.
I believe you actually predicted that. You said that would happen.
I also expected it, and it didn't happen, so very disappointed.
Well, that might put us now at number 2 sports podcast in the world. So, Nate, the rest of this falls entirely on your shoulders. So you better get us back up there. No pressure whatsoever. Go ahead. I will shut up.
All right. So, USC is kind of in the similar boat that we have been in past years, where every game they have lost has been a 1-score loss. And I mean, whatever we think about Michigan, they're not the worst team, but they're not the best team. 3-point loss. Minnesota's kind of somewhere in that middle upper ish tier of the Big Ten as well. 7-point loss, 3-point loss to Penn State, where they were ahead for most of that game and just kind of threw it away. And then Washington's just kind of a weirdo ball game for, I think, most teams. So, I mean, we were within a 1-score game of them. We had our opportunities. Like we've kind of said a few times, there were a lot of just weird plays. Balls didn't go our way. Everything seemed to go USC's way. And, I mean, like, good for them that they were able to figure out how to get the tips to go their way and, ultimately pull out a win there. Nebraska has yet to master that, but to their credit, and I know you guys have kind of mentioned it, alluded to it a little bit, the offense overall didn't, overproduce, didn't there weren't 150-yard bombs or anything, but it looked better. Like even though the product, the outcome wasn't necessarily like what we hoped for, wanted by 10 games into the season, it looked different enough from the prior, I don't know, not 10 games, but at least the past at least 5-6 games where I even said it last week, and the thing I've harped on Satterfield is that he didn't really put guys in position to make plays, and it felt like there were at least opportunities for guys to make plays, and it had to come with those, just kind of short dump off passes because our offensive line can't block for like a teddy bear, but they implemented it. They saw what wasn't working, and they made a change and a shift to kind of get away from that and try to do something that would put them on a positive trajectory. And it worked a lot of the time. I mean, it was, again, just a lot of those kind of underneath passes, but once you kind of unlock that part of the offense, then defenses adjust to that. It opens up, your downfield threats more. Obviously, our running game has been pretty weak for a while now, but I would attribute that mostly to our offensive line, which is, I don't know what the issue is exactly. I know there have been injuries, and I mean, we lost Prochaska before the season even started, and I know there have been a handful of other injuries on the offensive line between then and now. That I mean, once you're starting to play backups at some point, I mean, you want them to be competent enough, but I mean, your kind of upper limit with that is going to be limited in itself. So I don't know. The defense too is a little. I definitely get the gripes, and we want them to not be giving up as many points, and we want them to be kind of the defense of last year, but there was enough turnover, and we knew, especially going into this year, that the secondary was going to be the issue.
That was my number one
spot.
concern.
I think that was all of ours, if not most of our, at least on the defensive side of the ball.
And they started out okay. Now, granted, you take in the factor of the competition besides Colorado, but I mean, you were like, okay, maybe they'll pick it up with time, and then what we know will happened.
Yeah. So it is where we are, and it's just kind of the reality of the team is that was our weakest spot, and unfortunately, we were not the only ones who knew that. A lot of the teams have seen that on tape and have been attacking us downfield, and it works. And I mean, Sierra Wright has been playing well. Hartzog's been playing well, but they are younger. I mean, and Gifford just needs something.
Yeah,
but he's been
not
rough.
Great, Bob.
But I mean, the run defense overall has been there. I know they gave up 146 yards to USC's running back, but no touchdowns, and it wasn't like they were breaking off big plays on the ground most of the time. So it is what it is there. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we want to win. We're again in that territory last season where we need one win with 4 or 5 games to go, and we're trending towards the bad area of that. But there are tangible changes being made that we can see, and that gives me confidence that they at least have a shot to stay in these last 2 games and at least put themselves in position to, have an opportunity to pull out a win. Yeah, and that's I mean, really all we can hope for at this point. I mean, especially against the Wisconsin and Iowa. Like, I mean, obviously they're not as great as they have been in the past, but they have been tough games for us to get
Yeah, and
W's against in the past.
You
And
can't chalk them up. And Iowa down to Cade McNamara and then their third string quarterback now because whoever their second string quarterback's done for the season. So, and I think McNamara might try to play this weekend, but I mean, there's no guarantee that he will, and that might link doubt into if he even plays next week against Nebraska. So, Iowa's quarterback situation now is certainly in a flux of what they're trying to do on offense, and
which in theory at least favors Nebraska.
Yeah,
because run defense is generally our stronger side of that ball. So,
and I know I texted you guys as I was watching the USC game, and I'm like, we should be beating this team. And then every now and then it clicked at me. I'm like, oh yeah, Lincoln Riley is still the offensive coordinator, who is quite a good offensive coordinator. So despite if he might not have all the playmakers, he still knows how to carve up schemes that are run against him. So every now and then I'm like, oh yeah, like the USC might not be good, but Lincoln Riley's still calling plays, who's actually really good at it. So it's also, it's quote unquote acceptable in that scenario. But
yeah. And I mean, like it is fun to like joke about Holgorsen, saying that, hey, if you're not going to block, like you're not going to play. But like that, I feel like this team needs that tough love where you shouldn't be guaranteed a spot just because you think you're good. Like you should have to go out and prove it. And if you're not proving it, then next guy up has to be kind of like, we're not in that luxury of a position to just be like, well, they'll probably figure it out. Like you need the guys that are going to go out there, play their all, and give you the good minutes, give you the good plays. And if it's not happening, then figure it out in practice, I guess. But it's I like the mentality of like, we're not just gonna you've been the tight end 1 or the wide receiver 1 for X many years, this can stay that way. It's like, that's not how you make tangible progress there. Even if the growing is painful, that's just kind of how you grow. Whether it's better or worse individually, it's it'll hopefully pay dividends down the road for Nebraska. So it's, I don't know, I wanted to win that game. It was sad the way they lost and the opportunities they had, but progress is progress, even if it's incremental. And I will be sad if we don't make a bowl game, and there's going to be probably a lot of tougher questions, if they don't, I don't know that it's necessarily fireable offenses, but as long as the wheels are still turning, I think it that's what matters at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nate. The thing that I liked about the offense on Saturday was, I mean, yes, there were still some screenplays that were being run, but a lot of what I saw from Dylan was more quick routes, just more getting the ball out of his hands, which he wasn't doing as much. Yes, he did get sacked a few times there, but I mean, there was a lot more just getting your receivers involved, just getting the ball out of Dylan's hands, just kind of making some quick reads, some quick routes. Did throw the ball on the field.
Yes.
Now, one of his interceptions, was the one that he forced. Not the one at the end, but his first interception where he did force that. Like, Isaiah was never open for the start. He just didn't see it and tried to force it. So,
and that is the unfortunate flip side of having a freshman quarterback.
Freshman quarterback he's not going to see that.
Yeah, the issues are just exacerbated by the fact that we're on a pretty sore losing streak at the moment.
Yes, and that's where I kind of take into the optimism is, I mean, you could look at it as, yes, the Dana Holgorsen hire was very much, you could look at it as a desperation hire to get to the bowl game, just get 6 wins, just kind of get things figured out. But the more optimism output on that is, I feel like you don't make that move unless there is some sort of unspoken agreement at the moment that he's going to be the OC for next year. I don't feel like you bring him in for 3 games and that you don't at least attempt really, really, really hard to bring him back for future.
It also makes sense though in that regard, being that they were trying to bring him here last year,
yes.
early in the season though, or like
Yes.
in the off season. So
Yes.
yeah, that point.
And that's why it makes it makes sense, because at the time there wasn't a position for him on the staff, which just makes me think OC. He wanted to call the plays, and Rule was biased to Satterfield at that point because it's only been a year at Nebraska for Satterfield. So I totally get that idea that he wanted to come in and call plays. If he was going to be on the staff, he wants to be the OC. So again, you look at it the desperation, but you also look at it as you probably don't bring a guy in for 3 games to not keep him on your staff for next year. On top of that, I know I said this last week, but from the Dylan aspect is you do that move to, one, keep his family happy, get his future at Nebraska going. And, if Dana is the OC in the offseason, I mean, they're probably going to have a really good offseason, get to know each other, work out, get the schemes, get the systems, get things rewired in Dylan's, focus, mental, reading, defenses, all of that, so on and so forth. And I mean, that commit that they flipped last week, Dawson Merritt, I think his name. Dawson Merritt, the Alabama flip nonetheless, from Kansas. And, he posted that story, and, he posted a picture with Dylan. So, I mean, Dylan's out there recruiting, getting guys to, still say, hey, things are still going to be good here. We're going to get things going. You just got to, trust the process and believe. And, I wouldn't think that your freshman quarterback would be out there trying to flip recruits and get guys to come here if he wasn't, all dug in deep on it. Wasn't bought in or trying to come back at all. But yes, I mean, you had to make a change on offensive coordinator. We all knew that, and that's just for a lot of variety of reasons. So, like you said, Nate, there's it's slow, albeit to what we all want, but there is incremental progress being built. And we said this last week with Rule is, Rule was able to make that tough, hard choice and change things up when he knows that things need to change and get shaken up. And you can definitely tell, I mean, this is eating at Rule so much of just how he talks, how his pressures have gone the last couple of weeks. It's like, this is killing him.
He looks like he's aged 20 years.
Yeah. And
poor guy.
I mean, we all know that.
Good job.
Yep.
We all know that. So there are things to be positive about. Now, whether we see, obviously, I was never going to believe we were going to see big offensive changes when Dana was announced. I mean, it's hard to try to implement a new offense for 3 games left of this season. But
what?
Yeah, right. But I mean, I did like kind of the motion, the personnels that we got in there. I mean, we're getting Janira Bonner back in there again, and he looked really good on Saturday for how he got involved. So even like small things like that, or you're saying like Dana's trying to put his stamp on this offense in some way, shape, or form.
Like I said last week, I don't think that the athletes are the issue. I think it's just that they haven't been put in position that coached or put in position that,
So it's if you're looking for any sort of optimism, that's what I would kind of leave you with is it sucks right now. And obviously we have very much echoed that sentiment is, this sucks to be on a 4-game losing streak, trying to get one more win to go to a bowl game. We were in this position last year. We've been in this position since 2016. But
I'm tired, man.
I think we're all tired. And like you said, Nate, obviously if this offensive coordinator change wasn't happening, I mean, that would Rule's burner hot seat would skyrocket in the offseason.
Feel a little more uncomfortable for sure.
It would. The matches would definitely be lit, warming up a little bit. So, it's just good that he's able to look inward at the program, inward at itself. Like, how can I change? How can I try to make this program better than when I first came in? which again, incredibly low bar, if we all know, for that to happen. Incredibly low bar to clear that, but there is optimism, and I honestly, when we talked last week, if we were looking at these last 3 games of the most likely to win, I know 2 of us picked Nebraska to win, but if we were going to go with most likely to win games at the end of the season, I would have picked Wisconsin and Iowa as your best chances to win to close out the season. Just, like Nate had quoted, USC was in a lot of these close games that they blew, but they were in that because they were, more competent offense at that point, which Nebraska is not. So you look at Saturday against the Badgers, and you got tire fires of offenses trying to figure out what to do right now. So that's going to be the more interesting aspect. Now obviously if Nebraska's defense shows up, but it'll be senior day. I know Rule already announced that Jamari Butler and Marcus Buford said they want to come back for 2025. Both, I think, are 5th and 6th year seniors, so they probably have to apply for some sort of eligibility to come back for another year. But I'm happy about Jamari Butler because when he's been on this year, especially Ohio State, he's been on the edge position. So he'll come back, but I think he said there was about 39-ish guys walking, or 29 that were going to walk on Saturday. I haven't really looked into who's all eligible to try to come back with the people that are walking for senior day. So it's going to be a literal bowl eligibility bowl game in a sense.
Yeah.
Against the Badgers. So Nebraska's a 2.5-point favorite right now, and that's probably just the more uncertainty with whatever happened with Wisconsin this past week. Which again, probably the spread might even be a push by the time the game kicks off. I don't really know. If I was a bettor, I probably wouldn't touch this game because it's easily a push game. Even though Nebraska is the 2.5-point favorite, but if you're like an outsider looking at this game, you're probably like, I'm not touching that game because it can go literally both ways. Wisconsin could lose on a stupid way, and Nebraska could easily lose on another stupid way that we haven't experienced before, because it's very possible. I'm still going to pick Nebraska to win. I think that what I saw from the offense last week, again, they only scored 13 total points, but it was better than it has been the past couple weeks. Just seeing that there is slow incremental progress being made on that side, and I have faith in Dylan.
It's just that's only off of 2 weeks of being with Dana. So another week, like you said, incremental progress.
And Evan Johnson looked really good that second half too. So it's like if you can just get that out of the get-go consistently throughout the entire game of that kind of Emmett Johnson performance, his touchdown was a pass out of the backfield, but like his running in the second half specifically was really good in terms of getting to the hole, making guys miss. Nebraska hasn't had that kind of guy probably since Amir or Rex even. Just like a guy that can go in there and make people miss, make them like stop you. Amir is probably the best example. Rex was definitely a bruiser running back, but he was still fast and made guys miss. But in terms of like making you miss, Amir was definitely that guy. And Nebraska really hasn't had anybody since then. Emmett's shown flashes at times that he can do that. It's just we don't consistently do it enough, which is the issue and the detriment to the offense at the moment. So,
and our offensive line is still our offensive line. So,
that's still very much an issue.
It really stinks because I know, like, defensively, we were like, oh, the secondary is probably going to be the biggest question mark, and that's held true. But then I know we were like, oh, we think the offensive line might take a step, but it's still a question mark. And here we are. Like, I don't want to be.
There've been some injuries, and like if.
Yeah,
I feel like if
help.
Teddy's back, if Teddy's in there, that I feel like genuinely makes a difference.
Yeah, I think what this sounds like everything we've said, even when we didn't start recording what we were saying.
Yeah.
But like I feel like we just it's another one of those things where it's like I kind of am just ready to get over the rest of Frost's guys and just be like, let's bring in everybody that's bought in with Rule. Not that every single player that's still on the team from Frost era is all bad. But the point being is like, let's just clean slate. Like just, and I mean, obviously we're not going to necessarily get there quite yet, but it's just like, I don't know. I need to see. I think we're seeing the change happen. It's just at a glacial pace. So is what it is. Sounds to me though like we're gonna take that and give score predictions. So let's do it. But who wants to start? Who wants to fall on the sword first? Because I think I've got mine ready, so I can do it. If you guys are,
can fall on the sword first.
Yep,
you got it. You know what? They're gonna tie. It's gonna
This
end in
isn't the
tie.
NFL.
The first tie in a college, it's going to go for like 5 hours and be like, we're just calling it here. It's a tie at 9-9. It's just a 3 field goal game. No, actually, I think it's going to be with the offense on both sides being kind of not necessarily a question mark for us, but still kind of like, we don't know what we're going to get quite yet. Still quite a few questions to answer. But with Wisconsin, we're like, we have no idea what they're going to. I don't think it's going to be a real high scoring affair. I'm going to go 21-17 Nebraska.
I see that's kind of where I'm kind of leaning to, just because, I mean, unless we see something drastically different on Saturday, it's kind of like the offense gets to that 20-ish point range and then they just can't do anything anymore.
Right.
And that's, I mean, that, albeit from, UTEP and Northern Iowa, I mean, their highest points since then have been 28, and that was with Colorado and Purdue. They can't really seem to score that much. And, unless we see something drastically different, it's going to be tough to try to get over the 20-point threshold. And that's why I said that stat earlier of when the defense doesn't show up and they give up more than 14, then you're kind of SOL because the offense can't score more than 20 with that. All that being said, though, 28-14 Nebraska.
28?
I think Wisconsin's mentality of a dumpster fire of an offense and not knowing what's going on into hopefully a very hostile environment on Saturday as the last home game of the year proves a lot of miscommunications, a lot of we don't know what we're doing, who's calling what, so on and so forth. Leads to a lot of momentum for Nebraska going there.
I think it's going to be a bit of an uggo game.
Yeah, I'm not saying the 28-14 is a very pretty game either.
Yeah.
28 was the surprise to me in that case, but
not very much could be a very garbage time type score at the end too.
There was a part of me that was going to put 9 or like 12-9. So
yeah, and that's also a possibility.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go like a 24-13.
Okay.
I think Wisconsin's defense will kind of stifle us probably through the first half, and hopefully Dana figures it out in the second half. I think our defense comes to play though, especially with it being senior day and everything. I think there's going to be a little extra motivation for them to play a little better on that side of the ball. And it seems like Wisconsin's more of a running type team. That's kind of where they have their success for the most part.
Yeah.
And that plays into our overall strengths there. And yeah, again, you have like Tommy Hill and a couple of those more senior laden guys in the secondary, hopefully playing with a little chip on their shoulder their last game in Memorial Stadium. So
yeah, I mean, if you look at Wisconsin's last 3 losses in terms of, I mean, who they played is Penn State, Iowa, and Oregon, which certainly, very, very hard teams. But I mean, the Oregon game was really the only game that in their last 3 that Wisconsin's ran the ball well. But I mean, outside, they ran for 81 total against Penn State. Iowa, they ran for, I think 100 something, but their main running back had 52 total yards. So it certainly is like if you can slow down their running game, it opens up to Braden Locke making more mistakes and having Wisconsin to rely on passing the ball. So again, the Oregon game, they did actually run the ball pretty well. They just, did what Nebraska does best and shot themselves in the foot. But Braden Locke only had 96 passing yards that game too, so it's not like he lit the world on fire either. He was really bad that game.
He's only got 1,500 yards on the season.
Yeah, so it's like if you take away their running game and try to make Braden Locke win you the game, it's kind of what Nebraska's been this season. Yeah, obviously Dylan has more talent, but it's like, if you put the ball into Dylan's hand to try to win you the past 4 or 5 games like Nebraska's tried to do, it's been tough for him right now. So I think Nebraska should try to approach the same mentality as, make Braden Locke try to beat you, essentially.
I would agree.
Yep.
All right. Well, then with that, we'll also move over to our picks.
Actually, I do have a couple in mind. Just because I'm going to be of the mindset that as long as the Cowboys are still playing football, that we should pick against them in everything going forward, especially since they do play the Commanders this week. So I'm going to say whatever that line is, bet the Commanders by a lot.
Okay, let me.
Which I'm trying to stall the make up time to look for it. Oh, Commanders -10. Yeah, hammer that. Definitely can Dallas won, not just because Dallas's defense is bad, but because they're relying on Cooper Rush to actually win them a football game, which is not.
So that was -10.
Yeah, it's Commanders to hammer that.
All right.
With that, but that's going to be my bold one.
I like it. Nathan. Unless you're
Nathan's still trying to stall.
I'm trying to figure out how bold I want to go after last week's debacle.
Well, your bold your bold one is can be a little easier on your brain. Your sick pick has to be something just absolutely gross. Doesn't have to be, but
okay, bold pick. Okay. Yeah, I could probably qualify as a sick pick too, but we'll call it a bold pick. Minnesota beats Penn State at home.
It's not bad. I mean,
what's
Minnesota's
the
played well.
Spread's 12.5 for Penn State. I think Minnesota outright beats them.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean Minnesota's played well. Up until this point. So
Boy Parrish, he chose to not go to Ohio State, and turns out he's all right at the old football.
I'm gonna go different. I'm not even gonna do a football pick, but I saw this line. I'm like, I think I like it. Golden State is an 8.5-point favorite on Friday over New Orleans. And I think they're gonna do better than 8.5. So that's my pick. I will say Golden State 8.5, winning outright. All right, and then we're back to Andy.
You always love picking not football picks.
I have learned my lesson, Andy.
I'm so much more comfortable in football knowing that.
I am too, but it's that I'm like what's that called? Broadening my horizons. So
that's sure.
But my sick pick will be a football. Will be a football pick.
Will be football equivalent.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, sick pick. There's a lot of good sicko games this week. Both NFL and like definitely more NFL. There's a lot of crappy games this week for the NFL slate. But I will use Zach's words of quote unquote reaching out, extending my horizons, yada yada yada, cliche wording there.
I won't deny it. You're correct.
As much, there's no line on Clemson and the Citadel, which is bowl. I don't know why you wouldn't put a line on an FCS team, but they should let me pick it instead. No. I'm gonna say Kentucky won't win, but I think they cover the 20.5 against Texas. Kentucky hasn't looked terrible. Yeah. I mean, considering, they had the early loss, the 1-point loss to Georgia. They beat Ole Miss. They lost to Diego by a touchdown. Our boy, Diego. And then they only lost by 10 to Tennessee. So, I mean, that's going to be maybe a sneaky good game, too. If Kentucky can put Texas on the ropes at least. But, yeah, I think they cover the 20.5. That's a big line, especially for how Kentucky's kind of played this season, too.
I like that.
They did what Nebraska did during the 3-9 season, where they play up to their competition, but then play really bad to the lower competition.
Yeah, that's only happened during the 3-9 season, not any other season.
Correct, Zach. Why would you talk about anything else? I mean, they lost to Auburn, and Auburn's not good this year. They're bad. Hugh Freeze is not a good coach anymore. I said it.
I love it.
Sir Nathan. Unless you want Zach to go because you don't have your pick yet.
I have two. I just don't have the heart to go with one of them.
Oh, come on.
my credibility's on the line here.
You're not doing the 41.5 point Tennessee favorite, are you?
No,
there was some questioning that. I was like, maybe.
Right. The one I'm considering is the unlisted 33.5 point favorite that Florida State is over Charleston Southern.
Oh.
You know what? I love
do it. That's a really good pick, actually.
Sure. Why not?
Hell yeah.
Why not?
What was it?
Charleston 33.5. Charleston Southern will cover. I don't believe that, but I'll do it for the bit.
For the
I don't believe it, but I don't believe it, but I do believe it.
Yeah. Mine is I don't know. This isn't really like the NFL doesn't have any in my head like good ones that would fit this. I guess maybe there is one.
Why? Because
I don't
terrible.
Nah. There's a couple that would fit, but it's like there's a couple, but I don't know if I like it. So sick. What would I do?
Yes, what would one Zachary do?
What would he do? That's a great question.
And we're gonna find out right about
here in a little bit, actually.
Guess you'll have to tune in to next week's episode.
And absolutely no way to fact check whether what he picked was after the scores happened or not.
Correct. You know what? Yeah, there really is no way to know. Okay, yeah, I hate this pick, but I'm going to go with it.
Sounds like we're going to love it.
Somehow, Northwestern's going to pull out some kind of bonkers-ass game, and I think they somehow... I have no idea how. Like, this pick is so dumb, but I have no idea how. But I think Northwestern somehow plays Michigan close in the sense. It's a 10.5 line. I think they keep it within 10 somehow.
Okay.
I think it's going to be more of like Northwestern does like a couple things just well enough, and like Michigan's just off the plane a little bit, and they're like, it's going to be less of a good game for Northwestern, and it's going to be a bad game for Michigan kind of thing. So I'm going with that. Northwestern,
okay,
plus 10.5.
I like that.
I don't, but we're sticking to it. So, all right. Anything else that we haven't discussed? I feel like every
No.
once in a while we'll get on these before we even start it, and then we're like, oh, this will probably be a quick episode, and it still ends up being 2.5
Still not.
hours. So
No, just obviously a lot of Nebraska big, quote unquote, big games this weekend. You've got the Nebraska Creighton. Both basketball teams are playing Friday. The women will play first, I think, at like 3 or 4. 4 o'clock is that game. They'll play at Creighton, and then after that clears out, they'll play the men's version. I think both are at CHI. Actually, I don't think that, but either way, both Nebraska teams play Creighton Friday. First, women are at 4, men are at 7 or 7:30. Also that night, Nebraska volleyball will play Wisconsin here at the Devaney. So big game again. That very much could decide if Nebraska reigns the control in the conference standings, because they're undefeated in conference play right now. Both Penn State and Penn State's got a loss. Wisconsin's, I think, has 1 or 2 conference losses. So if Nebraska wins that, they're pretty much going to be right in the driver's seat of winning the Big Ten. They still have to go play at Penn State at some point this season.
I will say the last time that Nebraska played Wisconsin in volleyball at home, the vibes were pretty on point that weekend.
The vibes, that was a great sports vibe weekend for the boys there.
Just kind of putting it out there into the universe.
Yeah. Immaculate sports weekend.
Yes, it was a very immaculate sports weekend. But you have that, and then obviously you have the football game on Saturday. So, a lot of Creighton, Nebraska, Wisconsin opponents this weekend. So Friday and Saturday is going to be very sports pilled heavy if you're into local Nebraska sports, at least. A lot going on there. But yeah, Scores by 90 and everything. That's just
all right.
Always a stamp.
That's right. Scores by 90 in Dylan and Dana and Matt Rule we trust. And that's been
especially Dylan. He said we're going to get a W, so
that's true. Faith in Dylan. So with that, we'll wrap her up. That's been Nate and Andy. I've been Zach. This has been the Sportsball Podcast, your number one source for sports and the number one sports podcast in the world. Don't fact check us. We will see you next time.